right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. It's 5 p.m. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Carson City Planning Commission. Please call the roll.
Chair Borders.
Present.
Vice Chair Wiggins.
Here.
Commissioner Eswine.
Here.
Commissioner Kilgore.
Here.
Commissioner Lloyd.
Here.
Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Preston. A quorum's present.
Thank you. Commissioner Preston, will you lead us in the pledge, please? Thank you. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not on the agenda as an action item. I would also like to remind the people that are watching at home via webcast that there is approximately a 2-minute delay, so that things that you see have already happened by 2 minutes. So just so that you're aware of that. Also, if you're calling in to make a presentation, please make sure that you have muted your own computer so that we don't get the feedback here in the room. Having said that, we will also take testimony at this time for any item that is on the agenda, so that because we're still at a closed meeting for, or not closed, but it's their attendance is restricted because of COVID. We will take any testimony on items on the agenda at this time also. Are there any callers?
Yes, we have callers on the line.
About approximately how many?
Looks like 24 callers on the line.
All right. If I would also ask, because of the number of people that are on the line, that if you would please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes or 3 minutes, it would be appreciated. Also, if you're calling about the last item on the agenda, which is the soccer fields, we would be curious to know what your concept of this proposal is when you testify, either pro or con. Makes no difference. All right. When your callers come online, please identify yourself. Speak your name very clearly and slowly so we can make copies of it. And let's start with the first caller.
Caller, when you hear the beeps, it's your turn to speak. Please state your name.
Hello, commissioners. Can you hear me? Is it me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, so I'm sorry, but hello, commissioners. My name is Aileen Conant. That's ALINECONANT. Now, my husband and I bought our home across the street from the clubhouse parking lot with the intention of it being our last home. Now we are home shopping because of this turmoil, so you can see that we are con. Our residential community has had our lives turned upside down in 2018, 2019, and now 21. We are really, really tired of this. Every time it's the same thing. They want to get in on the cheap. They want to get in on the coattails of the golf course permit instead of getting their own full-out special use permit. That way, all the negative issues that need to be addressed, like noise, traffic, parking, wildlife, road conditions, and environmental issues can be avoided. There may be a need for this type of venue, but just not in our quiet, established neighborhood. Even as we speak, without approval, the applicant is building the fields and has already announced in the media they will be ready to open in May. This alone is a violation of city code, but yet the applicant ignores it. We don't need that kind of a neighbor. Approval of this proposal will bring in a venue that is nothing like golf. One is a quiet sport, the other encourages noise. One has no lighting, the other wants to bring it in. The use of the term flat fields is unacceptable, as that allows them to use them for anything they want. The applicant cannot have it both ways. In one part of the application, it says it will be an economic boost to Carson City and bring in people from all over. And in another part, it says that they only want a small amount of parking spots in some outhouses. None of this makes sense. The applicant has a sign-up sheet in favor of the fields. Notice that many are not even signed and are from other towns and states. Take note of what it says. No stadium is possible. However, the applicant is CEO of SportLogic, and on his webpage, there is a digitized video of a large complex on Morgan Mill Road. The bottom of the page also states the need for these flat fields, quote, far outweigh the commission failing to approve, unquote, this. The applicant has already shown that he does not care about the surrounding residential community, and now he does not care about the commission vote. The applicant states on the same flyer, there is no possible chance of a permanent building. Then are we to have outhouses there forever, really? This proposal is not a good fit and should be rejected in its entirety. Once and forever, please. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for your time. It was exactly 3 minutes. All right, next caller.
When you hear the beeps, please state your name.
Hello, Steve Wasner here.
Mr.
My
Wasner,
wife,
go
Karen
ahead.
Hinton, and I live at, sorry, sir. This is Steve Wasner, Wassner. My wife, Karen Hinton, and I live at 1717 Fairway in Carson City. Thank you for reading our letters on this matter. I'm not quite sure about your request of a concept for the sport fields, but I've looked at the various letters from the neighborhood and the surrounding homeowners that have been provided to the Planning Commission, and I think they're very thoughtful in their analysis of the situation and the negative impact on the area and the people around the proposed project. It is clear that the submitted application is deficient in the required information to make an informed decision regarding this request for a special use permit. The approval of a special use permit must be the exception to the rule because it is asking the city to allow a land use that is incompatible with the master plan and the existing land uses. The proposed amended use clearly will disrupt the current travel patterns, have a negative impact on the wetlands, and will create noise that will disrupt the surrounding neighbors and wildlife. This is supported by the various city departments that have indicated in the report that the application is inadequate and does not justify the extraordinary step of granting a special use permit. The application fails to inform the Planning Commission of the various problems related to traffic, lighting, parking, noise, safety, drainage, wildlife, the American with Disabilities Act, environmental impacts on city-owned recreational property, and the loss of value of surrounding land and homes. It is also clear that the neighboring residents are not against soccer as a sport, but just the placement of a pay-to-play facility that is solely designed for the development of a farm team for the United Premier Soccer League in an area that is not conducive for this type of business activity. And maybe this goes to your request about a concept in mind, is that if the applicant's true intent is to be civic-minded and help the Carson City youth soccer, as they've indicated, I would then urge the city staff to help locate and provide access to an area more suitable for the development of the applicant's project on city-owned land. We encourage you to support the recommendation of your staff and deny the amendment of the special use permit based on the inability to make the required findings that are required under the Carson City Municipal Code. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Wasner. Next caller.
Please state your name after the beeps. Caller, please state your name after the beeps.
Hello?
Please state your name after the beeps.
Yeah, this is Mike Ames, Ames. I will be commenting on the proposed soccer fields at Empire Ranch Golf Course. My wife and I moved into our new home less than a year ago. At the time, we weren't even looking for another house, but while surfing the web one day, the listing of a house for sale happened to pop up at the bottom of the screen. It just happened to have all the features we always wanted, and the bonus, it was on or next to a golf course. We set up a viewing with a realtor and were so sure of what we found, we made an offer that day. Buyers accepted, and here we are. It was immediately clear that we had made the right choice. At night, we could sit on our deck and just enjoy the scenery. At most, a couple of cars would come by or maybe some people walking their dogs. It seemed to be exactly what we thought it would be. However, here we are, less than a year later, facing this major change to the aesthetics of our home. Instead of the peace and quiet we have right now, we could very well be listening to loudspeakers and car traffic at all hours. Most disturbing to us was that a neighbor had to come by and fill us in on the future plans for the golf course. Also, I'm reminded that at the viewing of one major question kept coming up. Are there any possible changes to the golf course that anybody knew about? The sellers assured us that the golf course was in a floodplain area and that nothing could be built on the land. So that really threw us. As to the question of the fit between soccer and golf, we've been told that the soccer fields won't interfere with the patrons playing golf. I have to strongly disagree. As an avid golfer, it would be very disturbing to me if it, in the middle of a backswing, and let's say an air horn goes off or the fans in the stands start cheering, it would be quite upsetting. Golf is a quiet sport, and for good reason. Much thought goes into each and every shot. Just watch golf on TV. Every time golf pros go to hit a shot, the crowd is told to be quiet. Golf and soccer do not mix. If soccer fields are allowed to be built, we might just have to rethink our forever home. In closing, I feel that rejecting the application is the right thing to do. So obviously, I'm a con. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Caller, after the beeps, please state your name.
Hi, my name is James Robbers, just like bank robbers. I'm a homeowner at 1441 Empire Ranch Road. I have a piece of property facing the golf course, and the area for the proposed modification to the use permit in question is shown on the 2019 FEMA map as a Zone AE high-risk floodplain, as is the entire golf course. Area is also, I understand, is designated as an agricultural area. It has been deemed a Superfund cleanup site for mercury contamination as well. Work has already started to level out the area for the two playing fields with no analysis of the amount of mercury contamination in the soil that's been moved. The extra soil has been pushed to one side where it's mounded and is not disposed of properly, or it has been redistributed throughout the site. This also affects the floodway. We would encourage the Carson City Planning Commission to determine the amount of mercury, if any, in the disturbed soil by requiring an analysis be done prior to granting a special use permit. And we appreciate your help on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Caller, please state your name after the beeps.
Hi, my name is Jackie Ames, A-M-E-S. I'd like to say good evening to the commissioners. I am a con for the flat fields, which I refer to as the square peg in a round hole. My husband and I live directly across from the proposed flat fields. We have panoramic window views of the golf course, natural landscape, to include deer, quail, and plenty of birds. My largest window looks directly in the direction of the proposed flat fields. Morgan Mill is more of a country rural road with daily joggers, walkers, and occasional vehicle traffic. In addition, COVID forced our company to move its employees to a work-from-home platform, and is now my permanent status moving forward. Therefore, my home is now shared as a workspace. My job requires complete concentration, and as of now, I have the best work environment imaginable. This will drastically change if the flat fields are approved. I would like to take a moment to discuss the good neighbor concept. When you look up a definition of a good neighbor, you will find 5 main points: friendly, helpful, trusting, respectful, and considerate of noise volume. My husband and I pride ourselves on being a good neighbor and have all these qualities, as do our newly found neighbors of Empire Ranch. Now, a few points regarding the applicant as it relates to a good neighbor. It appears applicant is fast-tracking this change request to avoid the necessary studies needed for the new operations. The applicant states in his application the proposed use of flat fields will enhance the peaceful enjoyment, economic value, and match the existing development. Obviously, from the uproar coming from myself and my neighbors throughout the attached golf community, none of the statements being made by the applicant are agreeable to the vast majority of those neighbors. It is reasonably anticipated that the visual and quietness will be diminished. It is interesting to note that the applicant has avoided including plans for the sound systems that will be necessary for their new operations. The applicant states outdoor lighting of flat fields area is a future potential improvement and enhancement for the community. However, in the Nevada Appeal article on April 20th of 21, applicant stated lights are expected and he hopes for construction to be completed in time for Memorial Day weekend. Lighting, along with the aforementioned missing sound system detail, with both the potential for substantial quality of life deteriorations for the adjacent neighbors. Again, I am feet away from the flat fields and will have full visual of bleachers and said lighting. Without a permit, the applicant already held a soccer event or practice with loud music and parking on private property along Morgan Mill Road. Pictures were submitted to the city planning. The applicant appears to lack any concern for the residents or the city authority that told them to stop building. This speaks loudly to the type of neighbor the applicant is and will be if allowed to move forward. This proposal is not a good fit for a residential neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration of our concerns, and I respectfully request you deny this application.
Thank you, ma'am.
Caller, please state your name after the beeps.
Yes, my name is Mary Bowers. I live at, that's Bowers, Bowers. I live at 1663 Fairway. Good evening, Commissioners. When we purchased our home 20 years ago, one selling point was our view. We are on Blue One, which overlooks the golf course. We didn't realize how peaceful and quiet it was until we moved in and experienced it firsthand. The extent of our noise is golfers yelling at their balls when they'd had a bad shot, or the planes flying overhead because of the airport flight pattern. But this noise was to be expected because of where we bought. The golf course sits down in a valley below the homes, approximately 20 to 30 feet, which causes the sound to travel. The noise from the flat fields to include cheering from spectators, coaches, announcers, and air horns will be overwhelming because of how it will travel, thus affecting residents throughout the area, surrounding wetlands and its inhabitants, and the golfers. When golfers were asked how they felt about the fields, they said they would no longer golf here because of the noise being a distraction. Back in 2018, I continually brought up the noise and never was it addressed. Finally, at our last meeting, they said they would not build a sound wall nor use muzzles, so we would just have to accept it. Easy for them to say, as no one involved would be affected as they didn't and still don't live in our areas. Empire Ranch Road and Morgan Mill Road are in no condition to accept any additional traffic, as they are probably the 2 worst streets in Carson City. They had players on the dirt fields a few weeks back, and they parked along Morgan Mill Road, going in all directions with no considerations of the vehicles using the road. I walk the city-owned and maintained walking trail, utilizing Morgan Mill Road and Empire Ranch Road to return to my home, and the additional traffic will be hazardous to pedestrians. In the perfect world, they say traffic will go Highway 50 to Deer Run right and then to Morgan Mill right. But if you enter the address into Google, it takes you to Empire Ranch Road. Or if you know the neighborhood, you go the back way, thus increasing traffic in our residential neighborhoods. We ask that these fields be built in a location suitable for the area, not in our residential community surrounding Empire Ranch Golf Course. My vote is a negative to approve this amendment to the agenda. Thank you very much for your time and allowing me to speak.
Thank you, ma'am.
Caller, please state your name after the beeps.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission. For the record, my name is Vern Kern, Krahn, and I live at 4232 Quinn Drive in Carson City. I would like to provide public comments on agenda items E1 and E5. Regarding E1, I am president of the Lee Plemmel Fan Club in Northern Nevada. I would like to congratulate Lee. I would like to congratulate Lee on a very successful planning career in Carson City. As the former park planner for Carson City's Parks and Recreation Department, I had the privilege of working with Lee when he first came to the city. I appreciated Lee's work ethic and his commitment to make Carson City a better place. Also, I was Lee's wingman during the 2005-2006 City Envision master planning process and appreciated his leadership style, which was a collaborative, community-based approach that included both residents and city staff. It was this approach that developed the city's planning concept of growing up, not out, that still guides the city planning efforts to this day. Great job, Lee. Again, congratulations and thank you for your 20 years of public service. Carson City is a better place to live, work, and play because of you. Okay, regarding E5, the golf course. As mentioned earlier, I live at 4232 Quinn Drive in Carson City, not too far from the proposed project. I oppose the proposed project for the following concerns. Traffic. Quinn Drive is currently a busy residential street, in part because Quinn Drive is used as a shortcut to the Empire Ranch neighborhood. With the addition of 2 proposed recreational fields, I believe traffic will increase on Quinn Drive as more and more people driving north on Fairview Drive discover this shortcut to the fields. This becomes a bigger concern if the fields have outdoor lights and games allowed to be played at night. After the last game of the evening, I believe both participants and spectators living in South Carson City or communities further south will use Quinn Drive as a shortcut back to Fairview Drive. This would bring increased traffic and associated noise into our neighborhood that is trying to have a quiet evening or trying to sleep. I oppose the proposed project because of the field lighting. Currently, both my neighborhood and the Empire Ranch neighborhood have either no streetlights or limited streetlights. I am concerned with the installation of the field lighting as its glowing impact at night and the enjoyment of the dark skies that I have in this neighborhood. Although a bigger sports facility, I point the commission to Centennial Park and its glowing impact on northeast Carson City. I oppose the project because of the noise impact. The Carson River Corridor has historically been a place for hiking, mountain biking, horseback riding, enjoying nature, bird watching, floating, and rafting the river, and other passive recreational activities. With the addition of the proposed 2 recreational fields, the ambiance will be shattered, with cheering crowds, loudspeakers, and music during regular season play and tournaments. And this interjects sports activity and noise into quiet cottonwood galleries, the Carson River ecosystem, and adjacent neighborhoods. A far cry from a quiet golf course. Also, noise carries in this area of the community and along the river corridor. It is not unusual to hear gunshots from the rifle and pistol range, and I am concerned with the port's facility noise carrying down to the Carson River Canyon and to Silver Saddle Ranch. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Lee smiled.
Caller, please state your name for the record after you hear the beeps.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kara OKeefe, OKeefe, and we just moved into a house on Dogleg Road, just outside of the golf course. We are in the Empire Ranch Estate. In the document submitted by the applicant about Carson City needing more room to play, it does state that the Livermore Complex and Centennial Park areas have room for expansion. If these flat fields are such a great gain for the city, I'm wondering why the applicant and the city are unable to work something out and build them in these areas that are identified. I do not see any positive benefits that this has to offer for our surrounding residential community. I do see how this can have a negative impact on the surrounding residential community involving traffic, noise, lights, parking, and a string of smelly outhouses. It is clear to the residents that the applicant has other ideas. On the applicant's business website for Sport Logic, there is a digitized video of an entire complex off Morgan Mill Road, and Sport Logic is advertising for investors. Why else would that application include a multi-page flyer about a mega sports complex? The nature of games like soccer and football align. How can anyone with any common sense find that these types of games that encourage noise, have a PA system, and large crowds say that they are compatible with golf? That venue will drive golfers away. The houses here were built and sold as a golf course community. To allow a sport of a different nature to be tacked on to the golf course special use permit is unacceptable. It will violate our right to a peaceful enjoyment of our homes. We are an established residential community. The applicant states that these fields will enhance the neighborhood, bringing loud noise, more people, outhouses, and traffic, and enhances the neighborhood. How? If this proposal is rejected, as it should be, how will the construction even be stopped? The applicant has continued construction even without a permit. They have gone beyond grubbing, and the city has told them multiple times to stop. They continue working on the fields and have announced to the media that they will be ready to open by May. The application is being presented as though these fields are isolated. The Empire Ranch residential community stretches all the way around the golf course. The golf course terrain is low, similar to a valley or canyon. Therefore, people cheering, yelling, and noise from a PA system, including canned air horns, is amplified throughout the entire golf course. It is just not compatible with a golf course. This application is nonsense and without common sense. I agree with all my neighbors that this proposal should be completely denied. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Caller, state your name after the beeps.
Good evening. My name is Julie Slocum, Slocum. I am a homeowner in Empire Ranch Estates. Mark Ridow is erroneously stating on his petitions in the newspaper, social media, and door-to-door that all he needs is enough petitions for soccer, and then the commission will have to approve these fields. I counted of the 250 petitions in favor of the fields that Mark submitted, 58 had no addresses, 13 were from out of state, 8 from Lyon County, 17 from Douglas County, 12 from the Tahoe Truckee area. Only 32 had Carson City addresses. Only 16 of those addresses were in the actual golf course neighborhood. 110 were from Washoe County. You also received forwarded emails that were sent in for the fields. They had no addresses, and they all stated, I live in northern Nevada. They did not include that they lived in the golf course area or even in Carson City. It seems as if Washoe County is actually where they need more soccer fields. But Mark wants to build the fields here as the land is owned by his father-in-law, Dwight Millard, and probably free for him to build on. The petitions that were turned in that oppose the soccer fields are from the golf course area residents and all had full addresses and signatures. Mark lives in Reno, Dwight lives on the west side of Carson City, and so neither of them will be affected by these flat fields, nor do they show any concern of how the fields will affect the homeowners. They have created an unwarranted amount of stress to most of the residents who have made it very clear in the last 3 years that we do not want sport fields here in our residential neighborhood. Mark started construction of the fields without the proper permissions, and he has gone beyond what the city told him was allowed, which was only clearing and grubbing. I am aware that the city has told him at least twice to stop construction, but he has not. His Battle-Born Football Club website is already listing an address of 5101 Morgan Mill Road, and they are already scheduling games and selling tickets. I believe that he is desperate to get the property completed as games will start soon. He should have gone about this the proper way to begin with. We are asking that the modification be outright denied and any temporary permit be outright denied also, as the golf course was given a one-time temporary permit in 2019 and told that they could not have any more temporary permits. I believe that was by Lee Plemmel. Mr. Radow should also have to restore the property to the pre-construction state that it was in. Mark Radow and his associates should look for another property for sports fields that are in a setting that could accommodate traffic, noise, and lights. Empire Ranch Estates and Golf Course is not that place. I am opposed to the soccer fields. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
State your name after the beeps.
Yes, this is Steve Williams. I live at 1852 Empire Ranch Road. My wife and I have lived here for the last 22 plus years, and I just wanted to voice my con for this project. I've listened to all the previous comments on it, and I agree with all of them, so I won't repeat any of them. I also bring up the fact that Morgan Mill Road, that's the emphasis, my part of it. The Morgan Mill Road is not designed for this kind of improvement, and it'd be irresponsible, I think, to allow any kind of project like this without any kind of improvements, major improvements to Empire or to Morgan Mill Road and Empire Ranch Road coming into the subdivision. This has never been done, and Empire Ranch Road has fallen apart just from the traffic coming into the subdivision and the golf course. But Morgan Mill Road is built basically out of millings and was never designed for any kind of improvement like this. So that's all I got to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lands.
Please state your name after the beeps.
Can you hear me?
Hello, go ahead.
Yes, this is Michael Howard. I live on Empire Ranch Road.
Go ahead,
I
Mr.
am
Howard.
in opposition. Yes, I'm in opposition to the proposed project for all the reasons stated above, so I won't go back over those. The one other thing a couple other things I might add is I've lived in other communities. 10 years ago, my wife and I purchased on Empire Ranch Road with no intention of moving. We've gone through this now, along with the others, for a couple prior times with this possibility of soccer fields and actually a soccer complex being put in. We were definitely not in favor of this. I've lived in other states and other communities where something similar to this has happened. It does destroy the overall value of the properties. And if they ever return, it takes 10, 15, 20 years maybe for values to return. There is no value at all in this project for the homeowners in the area who bought in this area because of the golf course. Now, we don't live on the golf course, but we did in a prior area we lived on a golf course. So this is the reason we purchased near the golf course, because we knew it was quiet. We're not at all interested in living near a soccer field or a baseball field or a football field. If we were, we would have bought there. I know for a fact also that Morgan Mill is on the top of the city's repair list and has been for years. My wife's a former employee of the city, and so she knows that was on the top of the repair list when she worked there. So this project, the amount of traffic it's going to generate is just not conducive to the area. That's it.
Thank you very much.
After the beeps, please state your name. Caller, please state your name after the beeps.
Hello?
Caller,
Hello, this is Russ Wilson. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah. My wife, I'm calling in reference to the soccer fields, and my wife and I are decidedly against. We live on Divot Road in the Empire Ranch area. My wife and I looked for many years to settle down, to live out our lives. We found that at Empire Ranch. After over 20 moves in service to my nation, I'm finally making a house a home. It's perfectly located by many trails, abundant wildlife, and has a beautiful night sky. If the city approves to make flat fields and we lose what we have now, we'll have to uproot our lives and move again. We will not spend the rest of our lives here if the city council destroys our peace and quiet. What we have here now cannot have a price tag put on it. You will hear Mark say that these fields are necessary. This is a lie, as there are areas already available for field expansion within the city that will be public for all to enjoy. Mark says these fields will serve the community and interests of Carson City residents, but it's not true. These fields are private and will only be used for those who pay to play. Recruited players will be primarily from overseas and pay thousands of dollars per week to Mark to train at a high-altitude soccer center. These costs will make the fields only for the elite and out of reach for most Carson City residents. Mark will say that he is not part of the group in 2018 that tried to do the same thing, yet his name is one of only 2 on that group's master plan that has 14 playing and practice fields on the existing golf course. The first 2 fields then being the exact same as the one he's making now. Mark told me he would never put in a sports stadium at this location, but his company is already advertising a video of the complex on their website and on YouTube that displays the location at Morgan Mill Road in Carson River access area. This is the very same location. He might say that his company Sport Logic will draw people in and bring lots of revenue. No one can guarantee revenues. I cannot find any business license for Sport Logic, but his company is already asking money from investors, selling tickets to a venue that does not exist on fields that are not approved, and perhaps receiving money illegally. He stated in his proposal that the Morgan Mill Road is adequate, but this was proven false by your own city engineer's report. In his application, he stated that all the improvements will be privately funded. But that is a lie, as the city will have to spend a lot of money just to make Morgan Mill Road adequate and safe. He has said the proposed uses will not disturb existing or surrounding lands, trees, etc., but his work crew has already destroyed probable wetland in possible violation of federal law. Mark says the fields only need a special permit modification, but if done, it might violate a host of federal laws, as this is a designated EPA Superfund site, a FEMA designated flood plan. It's directly adjacent to a registered landmark, and the land contains possible protected wetlands and wildlife. Lastly, Mark will give you benefit after benefit about these fields, but as a former FBI agent, all I have seen so far are potential violations of federal laws, a dangerous approach to the project, with the only benefits being those that line Mark's pockets. My wife and I beg of you, please decline the application in full. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
please state your name after the beeps.
My name is Andrew Warner. I live, that's W-A-R-N-E-R. I live at 1671 Empire Ranch Road. As a resident and golfer, I oppose this plan now as I did when I first proposed in 2018. I moved here 5 years ago because of the golf course, the environmental areas, and I've been a member of the golf course and in the men's club from day one. An important concern to me and my wife is the environmental impact that has already occurred as they have started plowing and leveling what are environmentally sensitive areas. We have them all over the golf course area. You can go out there and see them. They've got signs up there saying environmentally sensitive areas. Bird nesting has already been destroyed as we speak. The impact of teams and fans are measurable. All you have to do is go to any soccer field currently in play and see the results for yourself. There is a lot of noise, a lot of yelling, and a lot of screaming and carrying on, which is a good thing. As a soccer dad, I experienced a lot of that and am also engaged in it. Noise impact will be unbearable to the peace and quiet of our neighborhood and golfers as well. Why do you think there is no talking, let alone screaming, yelling at golf courses, pro or amateur? In particular, the area we live in is above the course and playing fields. Sounds travel extremely well here. That's why we can hear a golfer yell 3 to 4 holes over. These are not compatible sports. Mr. Millard intends to push usage of the clubhouse, bar, and restaurant, just like he mentioned in 2018. Makes sense to him, but again, where do you think the patrons will park? Surely not at the other end of the soccer fields. Finally, I would not believe a word of either Mr. Millard or Mr. Rada. Their intent is to make money. Okay, we all like money, as proven by them beginning development before they even have others changes approved to the use permit, gives you an honest truth of how they conduct business. Another reason is how they have conducted themselves from the beginning. At least in 2018, there was a meeting with all concerned neighbors, officials, and the developer before excavating began, or the permits were approved. How obnoxious, rude, and underhanding can one be? We know how they can be because this is exactly what they've done. And I ask that the commission deny all permits and requests. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Please state your name after the beeps.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Hess. I live at 2006 Empire Ranch Road. I will keep it relatively short. My husband and I are vehemently opposed to the special use permit modification. We moved to the Carson City area in 2017 from Atlanta, Georgia, so you can imagine the difference in Environment A and Environment B. It took us over 3 years to find a home that we would eventually purchase and call home. We chose our home on Empire Ranch for the reasons that many of my neighbors have already mentioned. Having rented a home on the Dayton Valley golf course, we knew it would be quiet, and I myself grew up on a golf course community. So we bought our home expecting quiet and peaceful night skies after the golf course closed down. Imagine my concern when I noticed the activity happening on Morgan Mill Road. We are concerned for the impact it will have on our neighborhood, the traffic, the light, sound, pollution, and of course the decrease in our home values. We all know how expensive home purchase can be and how much of a competition it is these days. And for all of us that have invested our hard-earned money in a community and a home that we plan to call home for the rest of our lives or a substantial period of our lives, this is disturbing. I am in no way against soccer, as I grew up playing soccer myself. However, it has been brought up by many of my neighbors that there are other areas in this neighborhood, or not in this neighborhood, in our community, i.e. the Livermore Complex or Centennial Park, that are more suited for such a venue with more flat game fields. Therefore, we are vehemently opposed, and we hope that you deny this modification.
Thank you.
Please state your name after the beeps.
Hi, my name is Erika Souza Llamas. Last name is Souza Llamas, Souza-LLAMAS. I'm calling in opposition to the proposed soccer fields at the Empire Ranch Golf Course. I've been a Carson City resident for 35 years. My family and I live on Walker Drive, which sits just outside of the Empire Ranch neighborhood. My street is used daily by the residents of Empire Ranch to enter and exit the neighborhood. If the proposed soccer fields are approved, this will significantly increase the traffic on my street, as the soccer patrons will likely also use my street to access the fields. Although the developers are planning the access to be from Deer Run Road and Morgan Mill, I fully anticipate patrons to utilize my neighborhood. This will pose a significant danger to myself, my family, our family pets, as well as our neighbors if traffic increases, not to mention the noise the added traffic will bring with it. I am also concerned with my property value, as well as that of my neighbors, should the fields be approved, and bring the added noise and traffic congestion. The overall quality of life in this neighborhood will suffer. I implore you and the city to listen to the residents who will be adversely impacted by the proposed fields. I want to echo what my neighbor Mary Bauer said in regard to finding a more suitable location for the soccer fields. The suitable location is not the Empire Ranch Golf Course. I respectfully ask that you reject all permits and requests pertaining to the soccer fields. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state your name after the beeps.
Hello?
Please state your name after the beeps.
My name is Anna Winston. We bought a lot and built our forever home in Empire Ranch Estates 18 years ago. We chose to buy and build this residential area because of the proximity of the golf course, Carson River, the historical trail, the tranquil area surrounded by nature, also habitat for animals and birds. Traffic, Morgan Mill, nor Empire Ranch Road were built to support the sudden influx of traffic and pedestrian. Noise, pollution from spectators, PA systems, and traffic. Stadium lights, concession, booth, porta potties, odor, and a fourth of a mile or less from our homes, our neighborhood. We submitted over 160 signatures from residents from Empire Ranch, all against the proposed soccer field. Mr. Ratto attained support from over other counties, states, even Canada. Furthermore, Mr. Ratto has not been transparent. He denies further growth of the soccer fields, yet online he advertised sportslogicinc.com. Go to videos. It shows the plan map bordering Morgan Mill Road, access to the trail, and Carson's River. Additionally, it shows several stadium lights, 5 soccer fields, gym, pool, lounge area, and other amenities as well. This is not for the good of the neighborhood or our children. This is about financial gain. All this would diminish our property values. My husband, a disabled veteran, and I are senior citizens. We do not want to move. We like it here. Mr. Ratto's site plan of Empire Ranch flat fields show the so-called temporary seating, temporary storage, temporary concession stands, and 2 fields. Temporary wording will lead to a permanent buildings and the coming of what sportslogicinc.com video shows. We are opposed to the soccer permit and strongly urge the board not to approve the permit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Winston.
State your name after the beeps.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mariah West. I am a Carson City resident. I was born, raised, and grew up in the area, and I've been playing soccer since I was 6 years old. I love soccer, and this area loves soccer, but it is extremely undervalued in the area. If you want to succeed or further any kind of playing career in the sport, you have to go to Reno, and then eventually when you hit an age, it is not enough. You have to go to South Lake Tahoe or even to a different state to play. And then families are stretched then with financial responsibilities and burdens of bringing revenue elsewhere to other states. And if you can't play because you can't financially pay for it, you have to quit the sport, just like I had to. This area is heavily populated by families with extremely young children or elderly retired people. And there's a huge disregard for the demographic of young adults between the ages of 18 and 30 years old. These fields would provide an area for them, as there is nothing in this area to provide for young adults for entertainment value. This is a place to go that would better them rather than them turning to drugs, alcohol, or even crime. We need to stop relying on Reno for resources. We are a community in Carson City. We need to start providing for ourselves and stop going to Reno. The city has refused other fields as they've been suggested by other individuals. So now this is the opportunity to build fields privately, and it's not by the city. Reno is too far and too expensive to go to, and it is dangerous for our children to drive that far to practice or games at night. It causes an extreme danger for them to be doing so. Golf is a good sport for the old boys. It is an individual's game. There's not really a big spectator population for golf. Soccer is a family sport. It is a community sport. Soccer teaches individuals teamwork, hard work, and is an extremely goal-oriented. Soccer brings families together to cheer and support, and this will help local businesses by bringing people here, by bringing money to our Carson Valley. And extremely right now in our time of fear and despair and distance, with everything that's going on in our society, what we need is something to bring us together as a community, to cheer for our children, our nephews, our grandchildren, to support our families and not just the retired community. And it saddens me to hear that people are against this community engagement, an opportunity to encourage our youth, and that they would despise the noises of the joy of children at play. I urge you, community members and council members, to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state your name after the tone.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
Okay. I'm here to comment about the golf course, but before I do, I saw that about Lee Plamel, and I just want to say that I've dealt with Lee for the last few years on different things. He's always been professional, very transparent, and very helpful, and I'm sorry to see him go. My name is Glenn Conant. Okay. Commissioners, my name is Glenn Conant, and I am a resident of Empire Ranch Estates, and I am close to the golf course, and I oppose this. This proposal does not comply with the master plan, city ordinance, and the current special use permit. Balanced land use does not mean you can just do anything. It has to be compatible. Under the master plan, under guiding principle 9, stable, cohesive neighborhoods, the city will also work to maintain the quality and character of established neighborhoods and ensure that the infill and redevelopment is designed in a manner that minimizes impacts on existing neighborhoods, including rural neighborhoods located within the city's urbanizing area. Under economic vitality, 5.7F, property value retention, promote economic development alternatives that protect or enhance existing and future property values, including residential. Under the action plan, 9.3, maintain the quality and character of established neighborhoods. Establish infill and redevelopment standards to minimize impacts on existing neighborhoods. We are an existing and established neighborhood. Protecting dark skies is also in the master plan. Under the ordinance, Chapter 1802, City Ordinances, in approving a special use permit, the Commission shall make the following findings of fact. The proposed use will be in substantial compliance with the objectives of the master plan. The granting of the special use permit will not be materially detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. The factors to be considered in evaluating this finding shall include property damage or nuisance resulting from noise, vibrations, fumes, odors, dust, glare, or physical activity. The characters of the proposed use is reasonably compatible with the types of uses permitted in the surrounding area. Soccer is of a totally different nature and is not compatible with golf. Under the current special use permit, question that was asked and answered several times, will the proposed use be detrimental to the use, peaceful enjoyment, economic value, or development of surrounding properties of the general neighborhood, and cause no objectionable noise, vibrations, fumes, odors, dust, glare, or physical activity? Says the golf course will not generate excessive noise, and only lighting will be at the clubhouse for security and safety. There are extensive environmental studies and impact reports this proposal completely ignores. This proposal will decrease property values, increase noise, increase physical activity, increase traffic, and make this area less desirable to live in. The applicant needs to move on and find a more suitable location. In order to approve this, you would have to ignore the protections offered to residents in the current permit, city ordinances, and the master plan. This proposal should be denied in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for reading the master plan.
Please state your name after the tones.
Go ahead.
Caller, please state your name after the tones.
Hi, my name is Mario Yuvaldi.
Hello. Go ahead, Mr. Yuvaldi.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, I've been playing soccer my whole life. And
Do you live in Carson City?
I am not from. I'm not from the Carson City area. I'm from Fallon, Nevada, but I've always played in Carson. We've always had to travel to Carson. Carson's one of the main places we travel to go play the sport, and the lack of fields has always been a problem. I support this because I'm an athlete and I've always worked hard to try and succeed at what I do, and this is why I support the flat fields in Carson.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Thank you very much.
Caller, please state your name after the tones.
Hello.
Go ahead.
My name is Frank Chiga. It is spelled C-S-I-G-A. I'm a retired professional civil engineer, and I live at 1890 Fairway, directly across from the Empire Ranch Clubhouse. My opposition to the proposed soccer fields includes impacts to our quality of life caused by potential lighting, noise, effects on flora and fauna, parking, traffic, and pedestrian safety. Due to the time constraints, I will limit my comments to the latter three. The applicant, through his application, paints an altruistic picture of benefiting the community with a project that will serve all and provide immense economic vitality to the city, all while having impacts that are so minuscule none of them would need to be mitigated. The applicant appears to be brushing off all impacts that would cost him money to mitigate. Just because the applicant repeatedly states the items on the checklist are not applicable does not make it true, and they need to be properly addressed. This is an effort to gain approval on the cheap with no real concern for the surrounding community. The benefits derived from this endeavor are for the applicant himself, not for the community, and especially not for the residents that surround the golf course. If the two fields are being used concurrently, there is the potential for 80 to 100 players and staff to be present at one time. This does not include family and other spectators. This could easily swell the number of individuals present to 300 or more. At 2 people per vehicle, that would require 150 parking spaces. At 3 people per vehicle, it is still 100 parking spaces. If players and fans start arriving for the next game or session before conclusion of the first one, additional parking would be necessary. Where are they going to park? Surely not in the 32 spaces shown on their plan. So where then? If they park at the clubhouse, how are they getting to the fields? Walking through the golf course during its use? That would be hazardous to them and a nuisance to the golfers and the homeowners who paid a premium to have a home on the golf course. Would they walk through the neighborhood, the 1,800 feet to the westernmost access to the fields? This would include walking along Morgan Mill Road, which is less than 20 feet wide in places with no usable shoulders. Increases in traffic and pedestrians on a substandard roadway section are a recipe for disaster. So if it's unsafe and unlikely that pedestrians will walk from the clubhouse, where will they park? Most likely along Morgan Mill Road and also at the boat launch parking area. Parking is not practical on the south side of the road without sticking out in the road, so most will likely park on the north side in the dirt adjacent to or even on private property. Pedestrians will then need to cross Morgan Mill Road, again, a potential dangerous mix of increased traffic and pedestrians. The only reasonable solution other than outright application denial is to expand the proposed parking lot on Morgan Mill Road to accommodate all the users of the proposed fields and require a paved multi-use path on the applicant's property adjacent to Morgan Mill Road. I also believe the entrance to the proposed lot is unsafe to users of the Empire Ranch Trail. The trail ingress and egress is immediately adjacent to the parking lot's access point. This again creates a dangerous interaction between pedestrians, their dogs, their children, and traffic entering and exiting the parking area. The parking area should also be paved to prevent fugitive dust affecting trail users. Vehicles will need to access the parking area via Morgan Mill Road, which is already narrow, with no shoulders, deteriorating, and unsafe. The only reasonable solution, other than outright application denial, is to require the applicant to reconstruct the roadway to a full half roadway section of improvement, including shoulders, drainage, utility adjustments, including a full roadway section of improvement at the access point to the proposed parking lot, as well as at the intersection of the Morgan Mill Road and Empire Ranch Road. The application should be denied outright, and if submitted again, the appropriate study should be done to determine all the negative impacts to the surrounding community. These are reasons why I am totally against the proposed fields.
Thank you, sir.
Please state your name after the tones.
Hope Tingle, last name spelled just like it feels, Tingle.
Hello, Hope. Go ahead.
Hello. Do you miss me? No.
Of course.
And yeah, for all y'all against the soccer fields, I feel your pain. I've lived here for 57 years, and don't get me started on Dwight Millard. But that's not the reason I'm calling in tonight. I'm calling in about the article in the paper on Sunday about water issues. And before anybody gets all excited about soccer fields, I think people need to focus on water, which was always my big pet peeve when I sat on the commission. And I would encourage every one of you planning commissioners to reach out to Ed James from the Carson Water Subconservancy District to get his input about what is going on as far as water issues are concerned. And I feel all y'all's pain as far as the soccer fields go, but I remember when all that was, the golf course wasn't even there. So it was interesting listening to all of the input, and I don't envy any of y'all having to make this decision, but I really think that it is more important to deal with the basics of water and go from there. And again, thank you, and I hope y'all have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
We have no further callers.
All right. Well, before we continue on, I would like to, first of all, thank everyone. We had 21 callers at 3 minutes is an hour and 3 minutes, and it's now an hour and 3 minutes. So thank you all very much for trying to comply with our time restraints. It makes our day a little bit shorter. For item number C now is for possible action, approval of the minutes of March 31st, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I would like to move
Commissioner
to
Eswan.
approve the minutes of March 31st.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? All right. Second by Mr. Kilgore. Any other further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Abstain for Wiggins.
Okay. Mr. Wiggins abstains. He was absent. Let's see, where are we? Modification of the agenda. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order. The public body may combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and the public body may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion relative to an item on the agenda at any time. Hope, is there any modification of the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. Item E1, Resolution 2021 PCR1. Resolution honoring Community Development Director Lee Plummel for 20 years of service. Whereas on April 20th, 2001, Lee Plummel began his career with Carson City as a senior planner and began serving as Community Development Director beginning on February 22nd, 2008, unselfishly devoting his time, energy, knowledge, experience, and ability to the Carson City Planning Commission for over 20 years from April 2001 to May of 2021. And whereas Lee Plummel is instrumental in working with the community in the preparation and ultimate adoption of the 2006 master plan, And whereas Lee Plummel was instrumental in working with the community in the redevelopment and revitalization of the city's downtown, and where Lee Plummel was instrumental in creating a water allocation plan to understand and guide growth management, and whereas Lee Plummel has been instrumental in helping the Planning Commission update Title 18 of the Municipal Code, now therefore the Carson City Planning Commission resolves to honor Community Development Director Lee Plummel for these and his many other accomplishments and for his many years of service to the Carson City Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has greatly benefited from Mr. Plummel's years of public service, and all of the commissioners and staff extend their best wishes for all of his future endeavors. Adopted this 28th day of April 2020. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thanks, Lee. We'll give you one of these that's signed. And if you'd like to say something, you're more than welcome to.
I told you I was going to try to sneak out without this at the last meeting. But no, thank you. I appreciate this. It's been I appreciate working for people like if Vern Kern still worked for the city. I have to reconsider leaving, but we're all getting older, so it's time to move on. Certainly there's been a lot of people I've worked with over time here, great employees. As you know, you're going to be left in good hands. I don't know if anybody's mentioned it, but Hope Sullivan is officially going to take over as Community Development Director, so you'll be left definitely in good hands going forward. I appreciate working with the great planning commissioners, not to name them all over the last 20 years. It's been a good place to work because of that, because of the various mayors and supervisors we've had. So that's certainly made it easier to stay here and do the job. And I know you have just one last thing I'll leave you with. I know you have a long agenda, and it's funny that Hope Tingle called because I wanted to, mention that, she would always tell me, she would always apologize to me for being ornery and contradictory and bringing up counterpoints at these meetings. And I told her, no, we as planners, that's what we love. We like to have the discussion. It's to, you do need to bring those things up for discussion at the Planning Commission. So I just encourage you all to do your homework and come prepared with the laws and things, but continue to be citizens planners and give the city your views on things. So with that, thank you all very much, and good luck tonight.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for all your guidance that you've been able to give me, at least me, and I know the other commissioners would share that. So now you're going to sneak out, or you're going to? All right. Item E2, LU 2020-0092, discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to allow the installation of a building sign on the pavilion at Mills Park on property zone public regional located at 1111 East William Street, APN 002-181-01. Heather?
Thank you. Heather Ferris, Associate Planner for the record. The subject property is approximately 52.9 acres in size, zoned public regional, and is the site of Mills Park, the community center, aquatic facility, and the subject pavilion. The applicant is seeking a special use permit to allow for the installation of a wall-mounted sign on the eastern side of the pavilion. The sign will replace the freestanding sign that has already been removed. The freestanding sign was approximately 89 square feet in size, 25 feet in height, and was internally illuminated with a digital display. The proposed signage will be located on the eastern facade of the pavilion and consist of internally lit 48-inch tall block letters. The overall size of the sign will be 239.33 square feet, and the sign will automatically illuminate nightly from dusk until dawn. In discussions with the applicant, they've indicated that the proposed illumination will be dimmer than the existing lighting in the parking lot on the east side of the pavilion. And as a comparison, it will be similar in lettering and illumination to the Lazy Boy sign that's located on the Carson Home Furnishings store located on South Carson Street. Per Carson City Municipal Code 18.04.185, signage may only be allowed subject to a special use permit in the PR zoning district. The Planning Commission is authorized to approve a special use permit upon making the required findings in the affirmative. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval subject to the conditions included in the staff report. No public comment has been received regarding this project. I'm available for questions, and Nick Wentworth with Carson City Parks, Recreation, and Open Space is here representing the applicant.
Are there any questions for staff? Nope. All right. Mr. Wentworth. The 4 conditions of approval are acceptable to you?
Nick Wentworth, Carson City Parks Department, Parks Project Manager. Yes, they are.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? All right. I'm looking for a raised hand. There we go. Thank you. Mr. Wiggins.
All right. I move to approve LU 2021-0092 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval included in the staff report.
Okay, and was it seconded by Commissioner Preston? No? Is there a second? All right, Commissioner Eswine. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, opposed no. Motion carries. Item E3, LU 2021-0096, discussion and possible action regarding the request for a modification of LU 2020-0051, a special use permit for residential use in a business neighborhood NB zoning district to construct 140 apartment units. 126 was the previous approved, that exceed the maximum height limit of the neighborhood business zone 26 feet by 3 feet, a total height being of 29 feet on a 6.13 acre parcel located on the south side of Little Lane, west of Janice Way, APN 004-015-06.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At its meeting of January 27, 2021, the Planning Commission approved a special use permit for 100, I'm sorry, I was hearing background noise. Okay, approved a special use permit for a 126-unit apartment complex consisting of 12 buildings, of 10 12-unit buildings and 1 6-unit building, as well as approved a building height of 29 feet. The applicant is now seeking to modify the special use permit, and on page 5 of the staff report, I've called out the changes to the special use permit. For the control room, if somebody's mic's not muted, if you could mute the mics of the public, please. The most significant changes between what was approved on January 27th and now is an increase in the unit count from 126 to 140 units, an increase in the number of parking spaces from 252 spaces to 280 spaces, a decrease in the number of buildings from 11 to 10.
Folks, this is Todd Reese. Okay, now we can't hear you.
Okay, please don't mute. I don't know.
There we go. It's working now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so continuing, the most significant changes are the increase in the unit count from 126 to 140, an increase in the number of parking spaces from 252 to 280, a decrease in the number of buildings from 11 to 10, an increase in the number of units per building from 12 to 14, and an expansion of the clubhouse size from 2,253 square feet to 3,300 square feet. Staff has reviewed the 7 required findings and continues to make those in the affirmative, subject to conditions of approval. I'm happy to go more in depth on any of those if that's what the commission would like. The applicant, Tony Hama from Kings Barn Realty Capital, is virtually present. The commission has looked at this project or a similar project about 4 times, I think. And what you have in the packet is you have a comparison between the approved site plan that was approved on January 27, 2021, and the proposed. So they did give you comparative information, and I think the commission would agree this is significantly similar to what was approved, but given the increase in unit count, we needed to look at it as a modification. And again, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those, and Tony Hama is present.
Are there questions for staff?
Yes, I have a question for the developer, so.
We're not there yet.
Not there yet, okay.
All right, anything more for staff? Okay, Mr. Hama, are you there? I see you.
I am present, thank you.
All right. Are you familiar with the recommended conditions of approval? And are they acceptable?
Yes, I have reviewed the conditions of approval, and we don't have a problem with them.
All right. Commissioner Perry, you have a question for the developer?
Yes, thank you. I was just curious, because the major change here is the number of units, and that's really made up by the mix of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. There being a lot more 1-bedroom units. And I was curious if you could share with us why that change. Is that driven by some market demand surveys or anything you could share there?
Sure. Yeah, we did conduct some extensive market research, and what we found was that the original design of the 2-bedroom units was significantly larger than what the market was demanding. And we also found that the mix towards more 2-bedrooms as opposed to 1-bedrooms also did not meet the market. So we redesigned the floor plan within each of the buildings. And what is noteworthy here is despite the increase in the overall units, that was accomplished without changing the size of the building. So we actually reduced the overall gross building area because we eliminated the 6-unit building. So the 10 residential apartment buildings are essentially the same size. We just made the units smaller. The 2-bedroom units were made smaller, which allowed us to add a few extra 1-bedroom units per building. And we believe that it's a better balance, it's a better mix, and it meets the demands in the marketplace.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the developer? Okay. Any further discussion on the commission?
I would just make one comment, commission comment, because in my time, I've seen this one twice, and I understand now it's 4 times. So we really hope that you actually build this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that hope in the form of a motion, Commissioner Perry?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of an amendment to LU 2020-0096 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Is there a second? Commissioner Preston?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you to the Planning Commission. Appreciate your time.
Item E4, LU 2021-0090, discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to construct 2 ancillary buildings that will result in a cumulative area of accessory structure exceeding 75% of the size of the primary building and 5% of the parcel size on the property zone, single-family 1 acre located at 4635 Northview Drive, APN 010191-24. Heather.
Heather Farriskin for the record. The subject property is 0.89 acres in size and zoned single-family 1 acre. The applicant is seeking to construct a 1,666 square foot detached garage and a 1,292 square foot detached patio cover or pavilion. The primary structure on the site is a 3,139 single-family residence with attached garage. There are currently no other detached accessory structures on site. An accessory structure is a permitted accessory use in the single-family 1 acre district. However, per Municipal Code 18.05.055.7, if the cumulative area of the accessory structure is more than 75% of the size of the primary structure, a special use permit is required. Additionally, per Municipal Code 18.05.0558, if the cumulative area of the accessory structure exceeds 5% of the parcel size on parcels 21,000 square feet or greater, a special use permit is required. Per the provisions of 18.02.080, the Planning Commission has the authority to approve a special use permit upon making each of the required findings in the affirmative. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval subject to the conditions included in the staff report. I'll note that the proposed detached accessory structure will result in a cumulative area of detached structures of 94.23% of the primary building and 7.55% of the total lot area. We've received no public comment regarding this project. I'm available for questions, and I believe Joe Millett, the applicant, is participating either virtually or by phone. He was having some computer issues, so.
Okay, are there any
should be
questions
available.
for staff?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Just to confirm, and I believe this is true, if this garage addition was attached to the structure, it would not need a special use permit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, the patio pavilion, is that defined as a building,
It's defined as an accessory structure.
an accessory structure?
Yes.
Okay, so it falls, yeah.
Right.
Accessory structures goes to the size, not
Yes.
whether it's a building or, okay.
Right.
Thank you. Is any further questions for staff?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Perry?
So when I visited this, I could see where this is going to go and in the front yard there, but there's nowhere in the drawings here, at least that I could find or interpret, of whether there's going to be an apron in front of this and there's a drainage ditch and a culvert underneath the existing driveway. And I'm assuming that's going to have to be extended over to access this garage along the street.
So I believe in the comments provided by engineering in the comments section, they do address that. It's not included as a condition of approval because it is a requirement of the code. But it does address the storm drainage, and it also addresses the need for the driveway.
Okay. I just missed that, I guess. I was curious. Thank you, Heather.
Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant available?
I am here, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can, sir. Are you familiar with the 6 conditions of approval in the report that we have? And are they acceptable
am.
to you?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and I guess my question goes along with that of Commissioner Perry's. I didn't see anything about a driveway connecting that RV garage to Northview Drive. Are you going to pave that, or is it just you're going to use stone, or what? Can you tell us what your plans are?
What the final plan is going to be is I plan on putting pavers out there. As of right now, it's all gravel up to the side.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration.
Okay. Comments? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Esselman?
I move to approve special use permit LU-2021-0090 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Kilgore, is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Item E5, LU 2021-0093. Discussion and possible action regarding a request for modification to special use permit U9394-67, a special use permit for a golf course to allow for play fields on property zoned agricultural located at 1875 Fairway, APN 010-581-15. Hope Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. U93-94/67 is a special use permit for Empire Ranch Golf Course. That special use permit was approved on June 28, 1994, subject to certain conditions of approval. The applicant is now proposing to add 2 recreational fields with ancillary improvements, including lighting, bleachers, a storage building / concession stand, toilets, and parking on the northern portion of the golf course along Morgan Mill Road. The fields are proposed to be 36 by 210 feet and 210 by 150 feet. The exact sport wasn't identified. They were called flat fields, but there is references to soccer, lacrosse, and football in the application. Just by comparison, a regulation soccer field is 360 feet long by 225 feet wide. A youth soccer field, 75 feet to 240 feet long by 45 to 165 feet wide. A lacrosse field, 330 feet long by 159 to 180 feet wide. And footballs, 360 feet long by 160 feet wide. So the fields could accommodate any of those sports, the larger of the 2 fields in particular. The smaller field would accommodate youth soccer, would not meet regulation sizes. Would not meet regulation sizes for football or lacrosse or the regulation soccer. The subject property is zoned agriculture. Per 1804-160, outdoor recreational facilities, public or private, is a conditional use in the agriculture zoning district and may be established upon issuance of a special use permit. So that's what happened in 1994. The golf course is an outdoor recreational facility, a private one, and it received a special use permit. Now the applicant is proposing to add these flat fields to the golf course. It's not a substitute for the golf course. It's not a substitute for the clubhouse. Those amenities and uses still exist. This is an additional use onto the property. Therefore, it's considered a modification to the special use permit. There's been a lot of comment about the procedural due process on this application. The reason it's a modification is because the golf course still exists, the clubhouse still exists, that special use permit still exists. They're now proposing some playing fields and ancillary uses. The Planning Commission's review in considering this modification is identical to its review if it was a brand-new special use permit. So it's not as if this is an expedited review or a reduced review or anything like that. This is the exact same review. It just called a modification because we already have a special use permit there. When the Planning Commission considers this modification, it will consider the 7 required findings and determine if each of the 7 required findings can be made in the affirmative. The special use permit may only be issued if the Commission can make each of these 7 required findings in the affirmative. I'm going to speak to the Municipal Code 1802-0805H for a minute, and I never talked to you about this section, but I think it's an important section. What this says is the applicant for a special use permit shall have the burden of proof by a preponderance of evidence to provide facts supporting the proposed special use permit. For the purpose of legal clarity, This includes the burden of going forward with the evidence and the burden of persuasion on all questions of fact, which are to be determined by the evidence, are to be determined by, I lost my place. The burden of persuasion, the question of fact, which are to be determined by the commission and the board. Additionally, the applicant shall provide adequate information in the application and on the site plan to substantiate the required findings can be met in the affirmative. So the burden is not the staff's burden. The burden is the applicant's burden to convince you that these findings can be met. What the staff does is we look at these applications, we study the codes, we study the master plan, we use our understanding and our training to advise you as to whether or not we think the 7 required findings of fact can be met in the case of a special use permit. And we'll often provide conditions of approval for your consideration because we think that there's mitigations necessary to make the 7 required findings. In this case, the applicant or the staff does not make the findings in the affirmative based on the materials in the application. The staff and the applicant are agreeing to disagree. The applicant, Mark Radau, who will be speaking to you shortly with his team, is very clear that he believes he's provided to you the information to make these findings in the affirmative. And that's okay. Staff doesn't make it. This is now the Planning Commission needs to decide if you can make each of these 7 required findings of fact in the affirmative. For that reason, I have drafted and placed at your seat conditions of approval should you be able to make the required findings of fact. Staff does have concerns with 6 of the 7 required findings, and I'm just going to speak to those concerns briefly, and then I will answer questions and turn it over to the applicant. On finding number 2, which addresses neighborhood compatibility, staff has essentially 4 concerns, and I do want to say that since the report went out, we have sat with the applicant, and there are certain things the applicant is willing to put forward, and I think I'll let him do that when he speaks, and I won't speak for him. But staff's concerns are traffic on residential streets. This isn't looking at a level of service necessarily, but having gone to the site, it seems to me that visitors to these fields will get off the freeway, travel easterly on Highway 50, see the brown sign for the golf course. They know they're going to the fields at Empire Ranch Golf Course. So they'll take a left on Empire Ranch Road where that brown sign is, telling them that that's where the golf course is. And then they'll follow the signs for the clubhouse because that's where the parking is. The applicant does not believe that's the case, that is not the route that will be taken. But that is staff's opinion, and I think the residential streets there expect the traffic from the clubhouse and they expect the traffic from the golf course. Those amenities have been there nearly 30 years. But to have this additional traffic on residential streets, I think is an issue of neighborhood compatibility. On the parking, the applicant provided a document called Parking and Vehicle Trip Generation for Soccer Fields in Elementary Schools. And based on this document, the parking demand is 60 vehicles per field or 120 parking spaces given 2 fields. There's a different parking demand if there aren't games. The applicant does not agree with the staff's reading of this document and does not agree that there would be a demand of 120 parking spaces. And I'll let the applicant speak to you about that. In terms of lighting, staff does not find the lighting will be compatible with the neighborhood. I think the applicant is prepared to speak to the commission about lighting, and I'll let him do that. On noise, the staff is concerned about noise as well. And I explained to the applicant, I had a call from a neighbor to go to her house to discuss this project. And I drove out there and I was nearly at the maintenance facility and I thought, I must have gotten the address wrong. Like there's no way somebody this far out would be calling me about these fields. And I got a little worried, but I knocked on the door and sure enough, I was at the right house. And they explained to me that when there's outdoor events at the clubhouse, the noise comes straight up the golf course and travels. And it travels that distance. And so that made sense to me. And I heard what what that person said. I read the letters, and I think noise is a concern, not just in the immediate area, but in a larger area. So you'll see, should you be able to make the findings of fact, I am recommending a prohibition on amplified sounds to try to address noise issues. On finding number 3, that speaks to no detrimental effect on vehicular or pedestrian traffic. The staff has requested a traffic study that analyzes the intersections of Morgan Mill Road and Deer Run Road, Morgan Mill Road and Empire Ranch Road, US 50 and Empire Ranch Road. Staff has requested that this study look at the cumulative impacts of the golf course, the clubhouse/event center, and the sports field. Staff has not received that study. We did receive some information, I think, after lunch today, and that's been given to the commission. Staff has not had the chance to look through these documents. I have provided them to the commission because the applicant gave them to me to provide to you, but the traffic information, I believe, it was after 1 o'clock today, and the staff did not have time to look at that. Staff would also note that Morgan Mill Road, if you had a chance to go out there, you observed it's in substandard condition and the width is substandard. So these fields, if they're right there on Morgan Mill, are going to generate vehicular and pedestrian trips that are in conflict given the substandard width. On finding 4, that talks about the overburden of existing public services and facilities, including the storm drainage and other public improvements. Staff finds there's insufficient information to determine that the stormwater standards will be met. The stormwater detention is located in the FEMA floodway. We've talked over the years about the floodplain. I don't recall us ever talking about the floodway since I've been staffing this commission. Per 1209 of the municipal code, the floodway is defined as the channel or river or water course in the adjacent land area that must be reserved in order to discharge the base flood without cumulatively increasing the water surface elevation more than 0.99 feet. This is where the water's flowing. This is more than the floodplain. This is the velocity of the water. It's critical to have a drainage study for this parking lot that shows the capacity of the golf course detention system and determines the quantity of additional storage that may be needed, because that needs to be looked at in relationship to the floodplain. The staff doesn't have that information. Finding 5 addresses compliance with Title 18. Staff cannot make this finding. The primary concerns are lighting and parking. Again, I believe the applicant's going to talk to you about lighting, but when we look at the non-residential uses, we're looking at dark sky compliant lighting and protection of the dark skies as noted in the master plan. In terms of parking, the staff has not seen, although I think it may have come today in the afternoon, a cumulative analysis of the parking demand, considering the golf course, the event center, and the fields. This is not a request for a special use permit for fields. This is a request to modify an existing special use permit for an existing 27-hole golf course that has a clubhouse that hosts events and the addition of fields. So the parking needs to take into account all of those uses, analyze what that parking demand is. Again, if you had a chance to go to Morgan Mill Road, there is no parking on Morgan Mill Road. You can't accommodate parking on Morgan Mill Road. You have residential areas around there, so are we going to park the cars on all those roads because it's going to be closer? I don't know. I want to see a parking demand, and I can't find that we have compliance with the parking requirements of Title 18. Finding 6 talks about public health, safety, convenience, and welfare. Staff cannot make this finding. As I just alluded to, the subject property is in a floodway and a floodplain. To understand the impact on public safety, a technical analysis must be completed to demonstrate there's no rise in the base flood elevation. The application did not include a floodway delineation, although I believe, just having read the emails, and I haven't had a chance to see the materials that came in today, but I believe the applicant's intent was to delineate the floodway on the site plan. Right now, structures are prohibited in the floodway, although the city has allowed temporary toilets from April to October. The project is within the boundary of the EPA Superfund site as the soils in the area are contaminated with mercury. NDEP has jurisdiction over the Superfund site and is seeking to pursue sampling, and it's unknown if mitigation will be requested. I believe the applicant and his team has additional information on this, but the staff, any additional information we have learned through the applicant, so I'll let him speak specifically to that. We have not received anything from NDEP indicating that they've done the sampling and identifying any mitigation, if any, that may be necessary. Lastly, the wetland delineation should be completed to ensure that the parking improvements in particular will not compromise wetlands. The applicant has advised that they will not. However, staff has not seen the delineation, and again, we did meet with the applicant yesterday. He did advise he would send a series of materials today, which we had 2 emails from him, one a little after 10 and one a little after 1. We didn't have time. We had other things going on today to look at all those materials, but they are at your desk today. Finding number 7 talks about material damage to other property in the vicinity. The subject property is a challenging property. It's in a floodway and a floodplain. It's a Superfund site. It has wetlands. The staff has not seen the studies to verify the work in the floodplain will not modify the base flood elevation and that the grading will not impact mercury levels or create some type of compromise situation. Staff has also not seen the evidence that the development will avoid the wetlands. Therefore, staff is not making findings, the last finding. I think one of the most important sentences in this report, though, and I was very deliberately wrote it, is on page 10. And that sentence states, staff recognizes a golf course may not always be a golf course. And I want to state that out loud because I don't want to create an expectation that staff will never allow a golf course to become something else. If the findings can be met, the staff will recommend approval of a change or, reassignment of use, we'll say, of that land. In this case, staff does not believe the findings can be met, and Mark Radow and his team are available, and I believe Mark Radow is prepared to explain to you why the findings can be met. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll work through all the technical aspects with you. Thank you.
Questions for staff?
I have a question.
You could be number 2.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The Commissioner Wiggins, for the record, we had several people say construction has been started, and can staff speak to what they found when they investigated that?
This is Stephen Pote with Development Engineering, for the record. Staff received multiple calls over the past, I think, probably about a month, would you say? 3 weeks. So originally, they requested to do clearing and grubbing, which is just removing of the organic matter from the site. And when we went out there, that was what they were doing. And then they removed the organic matter and then proceeded to do some grading, which probably wasn't very significant, pretty minor grading, but still grading. So we issued a stop work order, and then that has also been moved over to the DA's office to take further action since they did have warning not to grade ahead of time. So,
Since the stop work order, has there been any other activity out there?
there was some activity then I think the day after at night after staff had already left, we received an email with a video attached to it, and then we went out and looked at the site afterwards. And since then, we haven't seen anything. The equipment has been removed, at least the equipment they were using for grading.
Okay. Commissioner Eswine?
Did they have any permissions to encroach on the wetlands out there? Because they have, in fact, encroached on those wetlands.
No, we gave no permission to encroach into wetlands.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can expand on that,
Go
and
ahead.
Stephen can help with this, but clearing and grubbing, as Stephen described, does not require permitting. There are no permits on the site. They do not have permission to do any grading. They have applied for a grading permit. It is not approved. They have been issued a stop work notice. It was violated. I just want to be candid about this because it's been alluded to. The neighbors have sent us videos of it. They've sent photographs. So yes, that has occurred and there are no permits out there.
Mr. Chair, I have a question as well.
Go ahead.
What date was the stop work order issued?
I don't have that on me currently, but I can see if I've got it in any of my notes. So it was within the past 2 or 3 weeks.
Thank you.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Eswine?
Well, I went out there on Saturday, and they had, there was a grader and a bucket loader and a broken down backhoe. I went out there yesterday. The grader had been moved, the grader and the backhoe had been removed, but it looked to me like they had done some additional grading in between when I was there on Saturday and when I was there yesterday.
What happens with that stop work order if it's violated like that? What's the procedure?
So the DA is reviewing that right now, and I believe the intent is to issue a citation.
Okay. Commissioner Preston?
Tax credibility.
I also was at the property yesterday and I saw some, there was a backhoe that was there. But my other concern was that yesterday it was kind of windy and it has been very windy, that there has been a lot of grading that's been done. And typically, anytime we have to do grading like that, you're required to have a water truck. And why haven't we have it? Isn't there something to do that? Because there was a lot of dust and it seemed to be a little bit more than just grubbing. So just an observation.
So there's kind of two pieces to that. One is with the grading permit that's been submitted, staff will be requesting erosion control, including dust control. However, NDEP with their analysis, their equipment that they use to sample the soil is sensitive to moisture. So they actually need the soil to be dry for that sampling.
Do we have any idea when NDEP will be there? NDEP, thank you.
I believe they have been on site, although we haven't seen any results of their investigation yet.
Okay, so you think they have been there? All right. Any other questions for staff?
And detention ponds and these different things is typically with golf. Golf is not considered a contact sport. And when you use the effluent, which is one of the things that is a requirement of this, and I know that this property is the main bearer of effluent for this community, second to Eagle Valley. So when I'm looking at this, one of the things that I've done a lot of research on effluent here and when I was in Lacey, Washington, too. One of the things that we found is that you have to mitigate contact sport. And there's a difference between golf, which is not considered a contact sport, and soccer, football, and lacrosse. So you're dealing with a lot of effluent. So our staff, as far as the city is concerned, has to have all sorts of inoculations because of the effluent when they're working with it, as far as, breakage of any kind of pipes and that type of thing. So that's something that I would like to have looked at in addition to the EPA on this being a brown site. The other thing that I think that is kind of important is because in my family, we also were very active in the Morgan Mill, what do you call it, the water trail. And at that type of thing, we actually, worked on with Vern Kern and the group to put in the parking lot that was there. We also realized as rafters that half the time it is so full during rafting season as far as water, because that whole area is a big flood area. Over the years, growing up in this area, I can tell you I've sandbagged around that area, around Empire Ranch and so forth. My other concern that came up was we were so excited that Morgan Mill was going to open up, and we found out that there was actually a historical site that was there that actually stopped Morgan Mill, the aquatic trail. So my question is that was on just the other side of the ditches that are there, because there's actually some swales that are there that go through some historical culverts, and that was something that was kind of surprising to us as rafters. And I'm wondering, because it's right there on that little shared area where the walking trail goes, where the golf course is, and that, if that's being addressed. So those are just a couple of the different things that make this property extremely unique that I have concerns about. So thank you.
Oh, one final question.
I had.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I had one more question. Thank you, Chair. Or statement, I guess. I noticed that in the documentation that none of the taxes have been paid for the 2021 year. Are those late? Are they not considered late until another date? I'm not sure if staff is aware of that.
At the time of application, the taxes were not paid and they were late. I have not revisited that since the time the application came in. The applicant may be able to speak to it.
Hope, the original SUP for the golf course, did it specify the size? I didn't see it in there. We're talking about a 27-hole golf course, but it truly is not.
What I gave you was the notice of decision. I didn't give you the entire file.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe, my recollection is in the file, it was referenced as a 27-hole golf course where they shared some of the holes. But
Well, but now that this flat field was on hole number 3.
let's have the applicant speak to that. I believe they still
Well,
have the
I guess
27
my
holes.
question is, if it's no longer a 27-hole golf course, is that a modification of the SUP that needs to happen?
I think they have an 18-hole golf course and a 9-hole golf course. So that would be 27 holes.
Yeah, but if it's not, is that a modification of the SUP?
If they reduce the
Yes.
number of holes, I would say no,
If they
because
closed-
it's less.
If they closed the 9-hole golf course, say.
Right, right. I would think it would not be because it's less. It would be like if somebody had permission, we just had an apartment complex. If somebody had a permission for 150 units and they built 100 units and said, you know what, we're stopping at 100 units, we're not going to build those last 50, it wouldn't come back for a modification because
Okay.
it was less. It wasn't more intensive.
Okay. Any other questions for staff, applicant? Okay. Is the applicant online? Mark, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
We
Yes,
hear
can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Excellent, great. Great.
Why didn't you continue this and get all your ducks in a row and bring us a package that was complete?
Well, I think it is complete, and that's what I'm hoping to share with you.
All right.
So I think at the onset, let me address some of the things that just came up in some of this conversation. But before, let me start here. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you to request the modification of the special use permit that currently allows for one form of outdoor recreation, and that's golf, on the Empire Ranch Golf Course. As you know, this location is adjacent to a relatively new boat ramp on the Carson River and recently improved trailhead that also offers the community access to recreation in the river. Let me take a quick second to address some of the items that just came up with respect to stop work orders and things of this nature. In advance of commencing any activity on the site, I personally met with a handful of city officials in public works, shared with them the maps of where we were going to work, descriptions of what we were going to do, what the plans were from where we started and where we're going to end. The confirmation at that point in time was, thank you for letting us know in advance so we could be prepared for any community comments and activities that take place. So that was done before anything ever happened. We did have a conversation then with Stephen Potay's office, who came out to visit the site, and there was maybe a review of what was the work that was going on. And we actually had a meeting at the office a few weeks ago. And at that meeting at the office, there was conversation about a series of memos and also the discussion of filling out and at that time applying for a permit to do some of what Stephen is calling minor grading, but we're still saying we didn't do any grading. Anyways, that being the case, in between that meeting and today, one of the staff people came out and visited the site at the behest of some neighbors from quite a distance, alleging work being done. I was actually on the site at that particular day, standing in one of the irrigation holes, helping the team that was doing some golf course irrigation system repairs. In that conversation with that staff person, the quote unquote, she said, green lighted. You're green lighted for doing the work that you're doing. So we kept on doing the work that we were doing. Okay. It was only then after that, again, at the behest of people and complaining about what we were doing, we came out again. And I actually had the opportunity to meet Stephen at the site on last week, Tuesday. And I appreciate Stephen taking the time to actually visit with me at the site. And Stephen's comment was, Mark, we discussed in detail the get the permit, but then you're green lighted, you don't need the permit, and then, okay, do the permit. So then I promised him at that time I would go to my office and submit the permit to him. He was going to let me know and process it when we spoke on Thursday evening, that he was going to process it on Friday the next day, this last week, Friday. Then he sent me a message saying that he wasn't going to be able to do that. And he'd let me know on Monday what was going to happen with that. And it was that weekends of time when I explained to Stephen that the machines to complete the effort of what we're trying to do, to ready it to lay grass down, because NDEP was there. And I'll let Dr. Palm talk about the issue with the NDEP. Their request to us was to accelerate as quickly as we could the replacement of the vegetation. And we're doing that with seed to ready the site for seed. But I explained that to Stephen about what we're trying to do to make it happen quickly. But you can't leave the machines on the site for too long. So the people that own those machines over the course of the weekend pick them up and move them. So now we don't have those machines anymore. So so the work that was done was the removal of the machines. So there was no work done on the property, but the machines are now gone. So anything else that has to take place on the site will be through with some shovels by yours truly. That being said, let me go back to what I had as prepared to share with all of you. Again, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you to request a modification of the special use permit. My name is Mark Radow. I'm a resident of Northern Nevada. I went to middle school here. I went to high school here. I graduated from UNR. I raised my family of 4 kids with my wife, Kelly, whose connection to the community exceeds my own. In short, we are committed to Northern Nevada as a community and our home. I have operated businesses in Nevada and in Carson City for my entire life. My effort before you today is motivated to make our community, our kids, and fellow residents a better place. As an aside, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And as I have personally invested my time and my money into this opportunity and into making this a reality for the kids and the families of our community. As a quick start, I'm trying to follow the points in an orderly fashion and to follow the order as presented in the staff report. And by the way, Hope and her team, they were excellent to work with and super patient with me. I appreciate their effort all along the way. It's important to point out that the same data points that I want to address often address more than one element of this application. I'll try to point those out as we discuss this project, but I hope the connections are intuitive, but if not, please stop me along the way. Firstly, this proposal is for a single full-size field. Let me be absolutely clear. This application is only for one field. The ancillary area, that is just that, only an ancillary because it is not sufficiently sized for any flat field sport whatsoever. And I did not specifically specify exactly which sports would be played because I wanted to be inclusive for all sports that use flat fields. Mr. Squar, a member of our team, provided a report this week concerning required dimensions of fields. There's an excellent chart in his report showing field sizes and comparing them to what makes up the proposed field. I understand Hope tried to do some of that for you, but I think she got some of that math wrong. But bottom line is one field, only one field. It simply confirms that the proposal is for one usable field. This has meaningful importance as relates to the numbers of people the proposal can accommodate. And we'll talk about that in a bit as it comes up. Secondly, the proposal makes an offering to include a separate parking location. This is located on Morgan Mill Road, immediately west of the Carson River Trailhead and the boat ramp. As in, an update site plan was provided to staff indicating the 9-foot wide stalls to conform to our city code. The number of spaces remain at 32 and include 2 disability spaces. We should make note that this quantity is 2 times the demand of a single field. And here, please allow me to triangulate the data in the Transportation Research Board report that is in your binders. It's a study that confirms 16 spaces per field are typically required. Hope, again, I appreciate her read of the report, but her read is completely inaccurate. Well, it's just inaccurate. It's only, as I just want to assure you that the study confirms just 16 spaces are required based on the maximum potential use of the subject property. Third, and linked to parking, allow me to address traffic. Staff had written that no or little traffic information was provided. Simply, this is not the case. We did provide, as requested, ITE vehicle trip generation reports for soccer complexes. We selected soccer only because of the availability of that data and its widespread appeal for use on flat fields. Messrs. Squara and Sullivan, both experts in the field of sports facilities who are on our team, emphasized in their respective memorandums about the implementation of this ITE data to the subject field, and that the vehicle trip generation is just 16 vehicles per peak hour and 71 vehicles per day. Continuing, we have long commented about the underutilization for all of the infrastructure at Empire Ranch Golf Course, and we triangulated various data points to this too. Nearly 30 years into the operation, not once, not a single year, does Empire even get close to what was forecast in the original SUP, the special use permit, 86,000 rounds of golf per year. In fact, the actual number is 20,000. We showed this in the water meter use tabulations of 560 gallons per day being used at the at the clubhouse, as opposed to being approved for 1,752 gallons of gallons per day being used. We also, this data is also in your binders that we prepared for you. I can point to the page if we need to look at that. We also just provided a month-by-month vehicle traffic summary on the entire operation of Empire Ranch Golf Course. This study includes the golf rounds, the special events, and even employee trips per day. We added in the full utilization of the flat field. This is really important. The total vehicle trip generation count per day is a range from a low of 116, based on what month we're talking about, to a high of 190 vehicles per day. Now, I am sure that you are all familiar with Carson City Code 12.13, and it has a 5-point test to determine whether an impact rises to the level of potentially require a traffic study. Not to restate Mr. Squara's memo, but the germane items are total vehicle trips at 500 and peak trips during any hour at 80. The entire Empire Ranch operation, the golf course, the clubhouse, the special events, the employees, and the flat fields together never even reach half of that number of 500. In fact, on the busiest day, at 190 vehicle trips per day, we only reach 38% of the threshold that Carson City requires to even trigger a traffic study to the likes of that Mr. Pote and Hope have or even begun to suggest. And I realize these are facts. This is actual data. And it's not just hyperbole of, oh, I'm worried about traffic. I understand we're worried about traffic. If the data suggested we would have the impact, sure, then we should do. Then the traffic needs to be done. But we're so far. We're not even close. We're so far below the threshold. I think that is an absolutely, a critical criteria to know that at the busiest point in time, we're only 38% of the threshold that it would even begin to suggest to have to do the traffic analysis. At this point concerning traffic, it's probably worthwhile to wade into a slightly different area, into the operational side for just one moment. I wasn't going to actually talk about this, but Hope brought it up because she talked about following the signs to the clubhouse has been there for 30 years. Importantly, flat field sports are organized around local clubs. There's many local clubs in the area, in Carson City and others presently. This is handed down by the national organizations that organize each of the respective sports. U.S. Soccer, just for example, manages all of soccer. If a child, or even adult for that matter, wants to participate, they must be a member of a local club. That club, in turn, must be a member of the association. Participation is completely membership driven. There are simply no random persons making use of the proposed fields. Let me say that again. There are simply no random persons making use of the proposed fields. There is absolutely no walk-up demand or traffic. And this also, just by the way, happens to be similar to the golf course operation, that no one can just walk up to the course and pull out a club and start playing the course. You have to go in to get registered before you can actually use the course. So it's public, but it's private at the same time. In this regard, all users, all members, will be highly familiar with the operation and the requirements for use. All members will be directed to clean up after themselves, obviously, and all access to and from the facility, we will be directed how to get to the facility, from Highway 50 to Deer Run Road to Morgan Mill Road. It is really important to understand that taking this route, not even one single residence of any kind whether it be single family or multifamily, is passed along the route. Not one single family residence has a vehicle traveling in front of it to get to its route by the members who are totally familiar with the use and daily operation of the facility. Before moving beyond traffic and parking, let me quickly address section Carson City Development Standard 2.3 about paving. It's important to point out that the adjacent Carson River trailhead that was recently improved advertises alternatives to paved parking and regulates these requirements. I want to talk about, I'm going to let Dr. Palm talk about this specifically about paving the parking lot and potential floodplain issues. I want to leave that to him because he's an expert in the field. He's a doctor in the field. But if you actually visited Carson City, if you go to visitcarsoncity.com/attractions/Empire Ranch Trail, which is immediately adjacent to the entrance that we're talking about on Morgan Mill Road to our field, it reads, a 1.8-mile decomposed granite trail connecting the South Empire Ranch Estates Park at 1466 Empire Ranch Road and the Morgan Mill Road River Access Area. A gravel parking area is available at Empire Ranch Estates Park. And it goes on, but it's a gravel parking area. Clearly, it's also, on the same point, it's also probably worthwhile to point out that Morgan Mill Road is commonly used for off-road vehicles, side-by-sides, motorcycles, dune buggies, all on Morgan Mill Road. Access is to the dirt road on Deer Run Road. Sediment can't be mitigated on Morgan Mill Road simply by looking to pave the small 32 spaces that we're talking about, when you have, it's a thoroughfare for all these off-road vehicles enjoying the area. I have no contest with these facts, but merely point out that we can stipulate, we can manage sediment through gravel and even a small paved section of ingress and ingress to alleviate any sediment conditions. I'm happy to do that with you guys and staff separately if need be. Interestingly, staff concluded in the Carson City Development Standard 12.5 warranted widening Morgan Mill Road, given the traffic impacts as noted, also that the city itself did not install these at the boat ramp or at the trailhead, which are immediately adjacent and shares the property line with Empire Ranch to the ingress of the proposed flat fields. This is unnecessary, it's unfair, and maybe even discriminatory burden to add this to this effort for all of the kids and all of the families that simply just want to enjoy flat field sports together as a family. As the staff comments pertain to stormwater, floodway, mercury, Superfund matters, and so forth. I've had the good fortune to work closely with Dr. Palm, but let him address some of those current concerns directly, because he's the expert in those areas. I want to point out that structures in any floodway, we had a very productive meeting with Hope and her staff yesterday, Rob Fellows, who's terrific. We've stipulated and reached common sense solutions with them so as to avoid the flood zone entirely. And as even Hope pointed out during that meeting, to even mitigate any gatherings of people in closer proximity to the residential areas, which basically means that the closest residence to the flat fields is a distance of 750 feet away. The floodplain delineation map with an overlay of the site was provided after yesterday's meeting with staff. We provided them earlier information, but then it was more clear to what Hope and her team were looking for, so we provided that right away, and that's in the supplement that you just received. It's a very simple way to see the floodplain and the site plan laid out on top of each other. Again, as stipulated with staff, we found some common sense solutions to the structure and floodplain concerns. Let me switch gears and briefly discuss the issue about lighting. We heard a lot about lighting. Actually, this was an olive branch offering to the city. As discussed with staff as recently as yesterday, we are happy to concede that there will be no lighting on the fields. It may be noteworthy, however, just to point out that less than 1 mile from Empire Ranch, where people are talking about, the preserving the night sky, I understand what those concerns are, but Centennial Park, with several lit fields, is literally less than 1 mile away from the flat field. So if it was okay over there, we thought that we would offer it to the city because the city has talked about looking for more fields with lights. But anyways, we're happy not to have lights. Lights could go away. The amplified sound and noise in general, I think that's it's a wise concern here. I think Mr. Squara, who's also on our team, and his memo was provided to you also, is an excellent and detailed memorandum on the subject of noise. He took the time to also analyze the study, which I believe he was already familiar with, about a sports facility in Texas that was provided to the staff about comparing our site to other sites about the impacts of noise. I don't want to speak directly for Mr. Squara, but his report called out glaring contrast between the cited study and trying to connect those to Empire. Most notably, the cited study was a 35-acre project. It had more than 15 fields. It was the sports tourism destination that literally, and this is probably the most important fact, that sat 15 feet to the nearest residence. So you got a 35-acre complex with 15 fields that's literally right on top of 15 feet to the nearest residence. In contrast, what we're talking about here is a single field with an ancillary, opened area that happens to be flat, not big enough to have any support any game. That's only 2 acres in size, and the nearest residence is over 750 feet away. The nearest residence from the sideline is 750 feet away. Mr. Squara pointed out in his memo that the 750 distance and the mathematical equation of the dissipation of sound over that distance, any emanating sound from the flat field would be negligible, if even detectable. He talked about the mathematical equation. Let me just skip over that for the time being, and I can let Mr. Squara talk about that directly. Mr. Squara did point out about the ambient sound of the area and the relatively close proximity of Highway 50. So you're talking about ambient sound and understanding you're on Highway 50, which is already a busy, highly traveled traffic area. You're already subject to that ambient sound and to the community. I would be happy to elaborate on any of the stipulations further to accommodate staff's concerns or even your concerns for that matter. Again, it's a single field. It's for the community. We don't have to have lights. We figured out locations for restrooms and portable storage so that there have no impact to flood zone or to the local residents. Traffic, as we've outlined here and shown with the ITE data that the staff has asked for, is only 38% on the busiest day. 38% of what the thresholds are to even start a traffic analysis. And noise, if we needed to stipulate some other things about noise and amplified sounds, we're happy to address those things. The most important thing that people are looking for is a place to play. And that's the most important thing. So there is no stadium contemplated here at all. And I hope that you will take into deepest consideration so many neighbors inside of the Empire Ranch community through the Carson City community that are all praying for these fields to be reality. And we want to do the right thing. We want to make the world a better place. That's our motivation. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, can I ask the applicant, Mark, were you planning to have anyone else speak?
Well, I certainly can, Hope. I left certain things for Dr. Palm that he could talk about some of the floodway FEMA, the NDEP issues. He can talk about those things, absolutely. I just figured that maybe here's a good place to pause. If they had
Okay, this is a
specific questions
pause.
about-
Okay, that's why I wanted to clarify, because I felt like you had other people queued up to speak. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Hope. I appreciate that.
Your questions? Go ahead.
Commissioner Wiggins, for the record. Was there any consideration for time of use that's similar to golf? And is that why you eliminated the lighting? That it would be similar?
No, lighting is an amenity, and I appreciate the question, but the problem with lighting, honestly, is that it kind of speaks to the whole use of the fields. You have a grass field. The overuse destroys the field. Lighting encourages overuse particularly of a grass field. And if you're going to light a field, you would probably want to use an artificial turf field. And this is not a location to do an artificial turf field. So, no, it doesn't really warrant having lights. It was only knowing the community, knowing some people in the Parks Rec Department that we could put lights, but it's totally okay not to have lights there, and just make it a daytime use facility, and that's completely okay.
One other question. We talked about the lack of fields in Carson City. Is this one field going to really solve the problem of not enough play activities or areas to play games and such? Or should we be looking at a bigger facility somewhere else?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I really appreciate that. Any one field reduces the stress and the use on the existing fields. Okay, and that's important. Right now, if you look at Carson City, you've got maybe 15 soccer fields between Centennial and I'm just pulling that number out of the sky a little bit, but Centennial and Edmonds, Livermore, and maybe some of the other county parks, maybe. So the reality is, if you add even another field, that's a significant increase of the available potential to alleviate the stress on the existing fields. And so, yes, I think it is an important piece. Does it totally solve all problems? Absolutely not, because the city continues to grow. You guys know that better than I do. But it's a step in the right direction. But here's the real answer to your question. If this was tremendous success, it is true that I am involved with a company called Sport Logic. Yeah, I do look at, and I have a team of people. That's where working with Messrs. Squara and Sullivan come into play here. They're experts in this field. They've built mega sports tourism facilities. That would require, and the things that people saw online, those renditions of things online, this is ideal. Could Carson City be home to a sport tourism facility like this and be on the map of the United States of one of the best, year-round sport destinations and be a huge boom for travel and tourism to the area? Sure, I've got a vision. Yeah, sure, it absolutely could. That is a $10 million project minimum, and it would require a lot of close work with all of you, and that's a much bigger deal. And so we're talking about what that there's no way that could ever take place on Empire Ranch Golf Course. No way. Would never happen as long as I'm alive. That'll never happen. Okay. God would have to change the way the direction of the water flows in the Carson River before anybody would ever do that. So it's just not plausible completely. And I've tried to express that to some of the concerned folks here, but they just didn't want to hear it. They said, oh, well, I was worried about the group from 2 years ago. I had no connection to the group from 2 years ago. That was not my plan. It was their idea to close it and put it in there. It was just, That group is out of business because maybe because it was such a bad idea. Okay, their idea was a bad idea. This idea, something small, something for the local community, something for the local clubs, kids and families can enjoy. This I think is a great idea because of its incredibly limited capacity. You don't want this to grow bigger than what we're presenting in front, before you guys today.
Commissioner Perry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Riddell. My question is, most of the time, sports fields like this are built and planned and constructed by municipalities. I think this is the first time I've seen a private entity actually propose something like that. So I'm kind of curious of what your business model is. Why, you've said that you wanted to do this for the community. However, I'm assuming since the golf course is a private entity for profit, that somehow there's a business model in that. Can you share that at all?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for even asking that. Well, I don't want to sound demeaning towards. Well, there's two ways to answer that question. Why did I just go ahead and why did we just do it privately versus waiting for, coordinating the effort with the municipality? Well, and then what's the business model behind it? The business model behind it actually is I wanted to do something for the community that I live in, that I grew in, I raised my kids in. I had a bunch of kids over my house over the Christmas holidays. The malaise was just, you could cut it with a knife. Kids that had committed their lives to sport. This kid, Mario, who called in earlier today, and he traveled in from Fallon, and the despair on this kid's face when he was, and his friends, they're friends with my kids, their dreams were vanishing and they couldn't get out to play. And I know so many other parents who literally, Miss West, who described traveling to Sacramento and to Reno and being, getting home late and not having opportunity in your backyard to do this. That's solving those problems was my motivation. I guess God's been good to me, so I want to, I had the opportunity, and Dwight Millard, a long relationship with Dwight Millard, who said, yeah, you could use some of the land that I've got that I'm not using right now for golf. I took a regular 9-hole golf course and reduced it to a par 3. It created extra land. And I said, hey, do you mind if I could make use of that, empty space that's not being maintained right now? And this is not a business to make money. I mean, right now we started this Battleborn Football Club, but for young kids, it's a development group of kids that are just out of high school that are basically hanging around, and they need something to do. They need something to get their energy out. They need something to believe in and focus on. So we joined the United Premier Soccer League and gave them an outlet. And that was, so why did I do it? Because the city's not doing it. That's why I did it. Call it philanthropy. I did it because it's not being done. And yeah, no, it's not free. Just because it's private, yeah, it costs a lot of money to do it. It's a lot of effort. I've been I don't make money standing in, doing irrigation systems, but I've been doing it, and I love doing it because it's the purpose of why I'm doing it. So that's the reason why. I hope that just resonates and makes sense for you. I mean, why do people do? It's the best I could do.
Mr. Preston?
I have two.
You haven't asked yet.
No, I was going to answer some that they'd already asked.
Oh, well, let them keep on going. And sure, absolutely. Okay. Yes, go ahead, please. Sorry.
Okay, I had one other question. The fact is I understand that you want to do this field, and I understand why you want to do it here because there's water available, and that's something that's not available in other areas. For instance, the Edmonds is basically at capacity. There's different areas that
Right.
are. Now I'm confused, and it just maybe I'm just not tracking right because it's been a long day. But you're offering memberships for adults, but then you want kids, but then you only want parking for 32 spaces. But on a field, there's going to be 10 people per team and a referee and a coach and spectators, and that beats the heck out of 32 parking spaces. I actually did a lot of work on, on the Comstock shootouts and so forth, and the amount
That is
of
a tournament. Let me
parking
pause
is
you.
huge.
Sorry.
But you see, the thing is that please understand, people have been calling me at home, talking to me about your vision, okay? And what they're
Sure.
saying to me is they're saying, we need this for tournament play. That's what I'm hearing a lot of, is tournament play. So is this for tournament play, or is this for Battleborn football that's only members of like 30 people? Or is this going to be actually rotated in between Reno and South Lake Tahoe and stuff? This is where I'm confused. I'm confused on your vision.
Totally. Thank you so much for even articulating that. I think you did a great job to even ask that question. So thank you so much. So the universe of sport is bifurcated into two different concepts. One is tournament play, weekend play, and that's the business known as sports tourism, essentially. Then you have the other side of the sporting world, which is the practices and trainings, and just not a tournament, but maybe a single game at a time, and that's it. Just a single game at a time. Now, the industry that's been developed is called, there's a whole business called sports tourism as an industry. And a lot of cities have gotten behind this idea of sports tourism because it generates a lot of travel and TNT taxes, travel and tourism taxes. It's hotel room nights, and you get dozens of teams coming, hundreds of teams coming together and descending. As a matter of fact, I'm going to one next weekend myself in Las Vegas to participate in, and it's for adults to go to. It's a big tournament, okay? And people from all over the West Coast are going to flying in and driving in to Vegas to go to. This field is nothing like that at all. This field is a membership-driven, community-oriented field. Now, membership, let's not confuse membership. Membership is not, it's open to the public, but in order for the teams that would use it to participate in even the local league of that exists in Northern Nevada, even for the team to participate in the Comstock tournament, you have to be a member of a club to participate in the Comstock tournament. Now, and that's the organization of membership. So the families, the kids, and the adults that would be members of these flat fields, Battleborn Football Club, and it's not just Battleborn Football Club, because there's other clubs that we talk to, like the rugby club and the lacrosse club. Everybody's a club, and the athletes are members of the club, and they're trying to get fields to use. All of those people could use this flat field, but it is strictly limited to the one playing surface that is there. That's it. And the Research Transportation Board, clearly reads that 16 parking spaces per field is what's required for that activity. And because it's only one field, it has no, like, when you go to Pete Livermore, where you have the Comstock, kind of the epicenter of the Comstock tournament, you've got a compounding effect at Pete Livermore, where you not only just have the 8 soccer fields or 10 soccer fields, but you've got 4 or 6 baseball or softball fields. You've got a playground. You've got a full snack shack that is permanent. You've got restrooms that are permanent. You've got the bicycle track too that's permanent. And it creates this synergistic effect of all these things happening and people staying there all day.
the comparison to just a single field where there's and no extra amenities. There are no extra amenities. So there's no compounding effect in terms of traffic generation. It's just play your game and thank you, goodbye. And that's just, but it's a place for them to play. Otherwise, they don't get to. Does that answer the question? I just want to make sure I was complete.
Well, Commissioner, this is Commissioner Borders. It just sounds like you compound yourself. If I have the Battleborn Football Club and I have a game at this field, I have my football club of 15 members, and another team of 15 members is going to show up, and I'm going to have a snack guy there, and I'm going to have an umpire and a referee and a linesman and a side judge and everything else. How is that not more than 32 cars?
That's first of all, the snack person is.
Well, forget about the snack person. If I got 15 teenagers and they're all going to drive in over there to play soccer, and then I've got another football club that's coming from Sacramento and they're coming in 6 cars, I'm going to have more than 32 cars.
No, sir, that's not correct. As you just said, I mean, first of all, there's 2 ways to answer that question. We can go through the math of how many people are going to travel to the facility and park cars and play in a game. Okay, that's one piece. Absolutely, we can talk about that. But secondly, there's 2 cross references of data that you have in front of you. One is the Research Transportation Board, and the other is the ITE, and they're sister organizations of each other. And they corroborate the fact of what the total parking space for non-tournament use, number one, and number 2, they talk about total vehicles per hour, peak vehicles per hour, and total vehicles per day. The peak vehicles per hour are 16. It's 16 parking spots, per field. And you've got a total vehicle trip generation of 71 per day. It's the studies that have been done. It's the data that's there. It's if you say you don't want to believe the data, well, we can say it's not close to dusk. It is what you have to follow the data. You have to believe the data that was produced by these reputable organizations, and that's what we're doing. Now, we also, experientially, we've got the advice of Messrs. Squire, who's got 40 years of experience in the field of developing sports facilities and managing the entire sport vertical. You've got Mr. Sullivan, who provided his analysis of the site plan and very familiar with the ITE trip data. And both of them are absolutely corroborating the fact that this is just a single field. It's not sports tourism. You've got no compounding effect, and therefore 32 spaces for 32 vehicles is double what the actual data suggests that you need. So I think there's, and then on top of that, for the whole vehicle trip generation for the entire Empire Ranch development, the clubhouse,
That's not the point. That's not the point. That's not the point. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that if you have a football club and you have an event there, you're going to have more than 16 cars. I don't care what the traffic. I don't care what the traffic study necessarily says. I'm going to just tell you.
What event are you going to do that requires more than 15 cars? I mean, the fields only accommodate what we accommodate. It makes no sense to schedule activity that is over and above what the facility can accommodate.
How many cars then is the Battleborn Football Club going to have in the parking lot when the whole team is there? You just
Well,
talked about
we had
two or
practice
three of your
last-
kids that are playing, and I'm assuming they're going to be part of this club. I'm just asking, if you have
My
a
kids are
game.
already grown up and gone, sir.
All right.
My kids are grown up and they've gone, so I unfortunately I missed the boat for my own kids.
All right.
So how many people are going to be there? I mean, how many kids are going to park there? I just know that when we have a practice, we probably have 10 cars when we have a practice. When we have a game, we'll have maybe, according to the data, 16. Okay, that's what we expected. That's what the expectation is to have.
So
and we
if
know
you have using your logic, if you have 10 cars from your team will show up at a practice, but then you have a game, and the other team and all the other people that are going to come are only going to come in 6 cars.
Well, the math is the math about how it comes from. I mean, I'm following the data, the transportation research. Maybe they come in 10 too. Okay, so that I'll give you the math. All right, so we come in 10 and they come in 10. So now we have 20 cars parked. Okay, I'm fine with that. And the referee, he parks his car. Now we got 21 cars. I'm totally fine with that. We've got capacity up to 32. If what we're talking about there.
Okay.
Chair, can I make a
Yes, you may.
statement?
Go ahead.
I'm looking at the Generation for Soccer Fields and Elementary School report on the TRB website, publicly available. I believe that some of this was provided in the documentation. I'm reading that it says practice, parking demand of about 15 vehicles per field. Games and tournaments, parking demand of about 60 vehicles per field. And regional qualifying tournaments, which I understand this is not the proposal of, would be parking demand of about 70 to 90 vehicles per field. Can you explain to me why this would not fall under games if you are having a game?
Yes, because the data actually talks about games with a plurality of fields within the facility complex. It does not. The important differentiation, and I really appreciate you asking the question, is that what happens when there's only a single field? And all of the other data, the analysis, and both Mr. Squara and Sullivan spoke to this sternly, was the differentiation between when you have a complex that has a plurality of fields, has a compounding effect of the parking demand, of the traffic demand, of what you gather happens. But when you only have a single field, there's no compounding effect possible. And especially when you have a single field with no surrounding other amenities like, full service type of concession stands or in playgrounds and stuff of this nature, you've got no compounding effect. And therefore the correct analysis is the single field operation.
Commissioner Preston.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Actually, Mr. Squara is listening, and he just wanted to add something. Go ahead. Can he just speak here because his link didn't come through? Go ahead, Jan.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jan Squara, and I'm the commissioner of the United Premier Soccer League. I'm just identifying myself, and I appreciate the opportunity to just maybe share my experience with relation to this project that is being floated. I've had the opportunity to meet Mark on a business level through the sport of soccer, not a personal relationship. I just want to be transparent there. My background is soccer. I'm not in the construction business. I'm not a builder. I'm not in the real estate business. I oversee the largest amateur soccer league in the United States called the United Premier Soccer League, UPSL.com. We have over 400 teams across the United States that compete year-round in an organized pro development league format. And I just share that with you to give you the background of myself and what my daily activity is and how it relates to maybe this, again, proposed project. Mark made me aware of what was happening, and I'm going to be brief. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I want to, as they say, cut to the chase, because I've been on the phone for an hour and a half listening to this conversation. And I am a homeowner, and I am sensitive to noise. I'm sensitive to light, so I can take both sides of the fence here. I understand what the objective is here. It's to solve a problem potentially. The first point I want to make is that, being that I deal with soccer every single day, my background is youth soccer, high school soccer. I played collegiately. I played professionally and overseas in Germany for 7 years. I'm very committed to the game, and I'm blessed that I'm able to play a role in the game of soccer today and continue my extension of my playing career onto the business side of soccer. And I think my purpose at this point in my life is to help the sport develop. I've gotten to these types of, I've been in many of these types of conversations in many of these rooms that we're in right now. And what I can say is that first thing I want to point out is I think Mark Rudow's intent is pure. And I want you all to know that I've listened to Mark. I've kicked the dirt because I was in San Francisco on a meeting about a couple weeks ago, and I took a trip up there and kicked the dirt to evaluate it. And I want to be clear that I think Mark's intent is beyond pure. He's a family man. He's not doing this for money. He's not doing this for fame. And he doesn't have time either, which is why he's doing it himself. And he identified an opportunity through a relationship. He identified a parcel, a piece of dirt that could be utilized. And my summary for you is I translate this facility as a glorified training field. This is not a stadium. This is not a tournament field, not even remotely close. You cannot host tournaments unless you have multiple fields. So tournament is off the table, off the table. There should be no discussion about this being considered a facility that houses for tournament play. From my professional standpoint, this is a training facility. I know that Mark has communicated to me over the past 6 months that he's had challenges in the rental of facilities, access to fields. Well, why one field? Is it really worth his time? Is it worth the money? Is it worth the investment? Well, probably not. But you know what? It's one more field than he has today. And it's one more field than the kids have today. Because, and I'm going to give you a very extreme example. I was on Google last night. I pulled up, for some reason, this will tell you how old I am. I pulled up a Wikipedia on the singer Cher. And Cher was born in El Centro, California, if you know where that is. And I'm going, that's pretty interesting. I would never guess that Cher, the famous star, Hollywood star, was born out of El Centro, California. And you know what I equate that to is today. Mark's purporting throwing out a field of dreams for kids. Maybe that next star player is from Carson City, Nevada. Maybe now that player has the ability to train 3-4 times a week, okay? Not play games, train. During daylight hours, because I understand now that the lighting is off the table. Okay. And you can't play on a field over and over and over if it's grass, because you're going to abuse it. So Mark's going to have to manage it and really actually limit play. Otherwise, he's going to have no more grass. So I do believe that it serves a very positive purpose from a community standpoint. I do feel it does impact quite a few families in the area, and there's no conflict of interest. Mark's kids aren't playing. if all the parameters can be met, and we obviously, there are obviously homeowners that are not exactly pleased with the plan. And I think Mark, from what I've heard, again in the hour and a half conversation, is that Mark's made some significant concessions. And by the way, I know for a fact that this has not been a fun ride for Mark either, because the stress that he's gone through to get it to this point. He's shared with me his the ins and outs of what's been going on, and I said, if I can share anything to the staff, and that is that this is an innocent field with a couple benches, some parking spots. You have 18 players, kids, 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds. That's 2 to a car. That's 18 players to a team, 11 players on the field, 7 substitutes, 3 referees, parents. That's it. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about 6 teams coming on the field. We're not talking about having games played one after another because the field won't handle it. It'll die. It will literally turn into dirt. They'll just the grass will go away. So I appreciate what everybody is on this call for. I'm sensitive to noise myself, and I'm sensitive to light, and I've had my discussions on other real estate matters myself. But I think that the fact that this is a golf course, an existing golf course, and you have a section of the golf course that can be utilized, and I think if Mark's given some parameters to work with, he'll certainly make every effort to conform and build out this field for training purposes. Fields are a big problem across America. One field is huge. It may not seem like a big deal, but it's a big deal for one soccer club. Soccer clubs cannot sustain themselves if they have to pay high rent to high schools. High schools charge a lot of money to clubs, and at a certain point they run out of cash. So maybe that's another reason why Mark is doing this, so that it's self-sustaining. I could probably go on, but I hope that helps. The purpose of me sharing is to help contribute to the conversation, and I'm happy to comment if there are any comments.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Thank you, John.
Or Commissioner S1, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm a little confused because you keep saying that you got 32 parking spaces, but you only need 16, but then you've got seating for anywhere from 60 to 90 people in your plan. And your numbers just don't make sense to me.
Well, I think you're extrapolating, that a particular bleacher is going to be full all the time, or how big or small the bleacher is going to be. So we offered a size of a bleacher that was a standard size, but we haven't even selected bleachers at all. So again, I think we just need to conform to what our parameters are, and we will add seating. Typically, right now, there are no seating for parents and grandparents when they go to Edmonds Field, for example. There's no place for them to sit. They have to sit in their car, or they have to sit on the grass. And I don't want to complain about my grandfather, my son's grandfather here, but he doesn't really want to sit on the grass. So yeah, we just want to have something convenient and comfortable for them to sit down and enjoy watching their grandkids play. It doesn't matter how big it's going to be honest with you. If you want to be smaller, well then it's okay. We'll make it smaller.
Commissioner Preston.
I'm just going to propose here. I'm sure that your idea is pure. I get it. But I think the one thing is maybe you're too premature putting this together. I think maybe too premature on making announcements in the paper, getting people going. Because what I'm seeing here, and what you proposed to us, and it keeps changing. It showed 2 fields. Now we're going to talk about 1 field. So it's off the table. Talk about lighting. Okay, well, lighting's off. Okay. Then we talk about bleachers and all this other stuff. What I'm saying is that when most people that come to the Planning Commission actually have a plan that they have. So what you're saying to us is initially you come to it here and you're telling us, I mean, I am so confused right now, is that you're going to only have one field. It's not going to be for tournaments, although we hear these other different things in the paper and all over the place. And I'm going, okay, great. And talking about spectators, but now you're saying, okay, you don't know how big the benches are going to be. Well, the benches indicated on your plan are pretty big. So, I mean, I'm looking at this going, it's not cohesive. It's not cohesive. And
I disagree.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I hear you saying that what you are being misled by are the uninformed reactionary comments from an audience that's extrapolating what was going to be done back in 2018. I never connected the 2 pieces together, Mark Radau being involved with a company called Sport Logic and this effort here. That is all hearsay that you're allowing to cloud the issue here. I've always proposed two areas that are flat. That's exactly correct. But when you're talking about the actual use and talking about in terms of the impact that the incomplete area addresses, is only one true playing field. There's been no convolution of that whatsoever. Now, what the media writes about, what they've been heard from other uninformed people, we can't speak to why the media said, I mean, fake news. What can you can't, the only way to address fake news is with facts, okay? So I said in the, that's an issue of fields. Then we talk about lights. In the original proposal, I always said that the lights are a non-essential appurtenance to this application. And that's what I said all along here, all along. I've never changed from that perspective. Then we speak about, bleachers and spectators, okay? Well, we know how big, we know the size of what we can accommodate, and that's limited to that. How long the bench is truly of no consequence to what the facility impact is going to be. It purely is just what it is.
But
okay,
Mark,
so I don't think.
Mark, the difference is that your concept is fine, but this is the planning department, and we need a plan. We don't need a smorgasbord.
You have a
no. Wait a minute. We don't need a smorgasbord, and we don't need ifs, ands, or buts. If you put together a single plan, and it goes through the staff, and the staff says, we'll approve it with these conditions, then it can come to us, and we have something to work on. We don't have anything to work on with what you're presenting, because it's a moving target.
I don't believe it's a moving target, because we're talking about the 2 areas of the 2 different dimensions of what we're talked about. We've talked about 32 parking spaces, and that's really all we've talked about. And at the very onset, we said lights.
No, we're talking about the drainage plan. We're talking about a traffic plan. We're talking about the NDEP reports. Now, you've submitted them.
Well,
you have submitted plans, but they are not acceptable.
Well, the thing is, this is where we, I agree to disagree with the staff because the code, the Carson City code is clear that Carson City code is clear about what are the 5 bullet points to trigger a traffic analysis. And in that regard, the data doesn't even get to 30, doesn't surpass 38% of what that minimum threshold is. Okay. So the data doesn't change by just kicking waiting for later, because there's no traffic study required today.
But what you want, Mark, ultimately is to get this approved.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing that we're going to have trouble doing that. So where do you go from here? How do we solve your problem?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mr. Chairman, as we
go ahead.
As we move forward, if I may, Dwight Millard for the record, I would just like to answer a couple of your questions that were raised earlier that might shed some additional light on the project.
Okay.
If you can't tell, Mark is passionate about this. Mm-hmm. For 5 years, he took his boys over the hill to Sacramento 4 or 5 times a week to play because it gave them a stronger competition. His 3 boys now, my grandchildren, 20, 18, and 16, now reside in Spain as they are trying to become professional soccer players. So it's a passion that's pretty squarely away to try to provide a development field. I might tell you that the reason that we have room on Empire Ranch Golf Course to allow this is that Empire Ranch was designed and built as 3 9-hole courses. The red course, which is the most northern course, has been shortened from 3,000 yards to a little over 1,000 and has become a par 3 course, a course that's needed in the area. There's none in Reno and none here. So we look forward to opening that within a couple of months as a shorter course. Upon doing that, we opened up a lot of land along Morgan Mill and along the river, which we then made available to Mark if he could make that work as a field. There are no wetlands that have been intruded upon. I've been involved with Empire Ranch from the very beginning concept and inception, working with the Army Corps of Engineers in DEP. And I can tell you that they did not involve themselves in any wetlands. NDEP has already been on site and has taken samples for mercury, and they will provide, which could be a condition of approval, of the mercury content that's there. The taxes, in fact, have all been paid. They weren't at the time of the application, but they were paid within the last week or so. I sat on tourism for some 20 years, and for 20 years I advocated more soccer fields in Carson when I saw what soccer does to tourism. However, this field is a single field and doesn't address that. Last, I'd like to discuss the small grading that was done out there. The grading was so minor that the sprinkler system was never shut off, and that the sprinkler system at any one day, at any one given time, you could bring up any head and sprinkle the lawn for dust control. So we did not have a water truck, but we had the dirt under control. There really wasn't that much disturbance to the dirt. It was mainly the removal of the existing and the replanting of better and of grass used for that. That's really all I wanted to say. I thought maybe that would clear up some things so we don't have to go down that road looking for taxes or why this became available to Mark to do this.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. Mr. Eswan, Commissioner Eswan.
I would like to dispute his claim that they are not impacting any wetlands. I walked around that site, and they have pushed dirt and debris into existing wetlands. There's no mitigation for drainage into those wetlands. I just have a hard time believing that this project is going to go ahead the way they say it is when everything indicates that they're not doing what they say they're doing. Thank you.
Mr. Preston?
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to clarify right now is the people that called me at home were people that were actually in support of your program. And I think that's really important because the fact is that this board here, I can speak for myself, is we're open to it. That's not a problem. But you have a wonderful resource with Dwight right there. He has gone through this process so many times and he knows what we're looking for. It's one thing to be impassioned, but it's another thing to realize that there are going to be access issues. There's going to be neighborhood issues. There's going to be all sorts of issues that need to be brought up. But when Mr. Millard brings us a property, he usually brings us a property that shows a footprint of an actual thing, not two separate footprints, not other different issues. So I think that you are premature. I think that's the main thing with me. So, but I did want you to know that, no, you have a lot of people that are in support of you, and I have heard from them. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, you may. Go ahead.
I want to agree with Commissioner Preston. I think that there is definitely more information that needs to be shared going forward.
Okay. I don't know that we're going to go much farther.
Actually, there were some comments that were brought up earlier, sir, Chairman.
Okay.
There were some comments brought up earlier, and Dr. Palm has been patient looking for his opportunity to weigh in on some of the floodway, stormwater, NDEP issues. He'd like to, this is his area of expertise, and I think it would be worthwhile to discuss those. And that might weigh in on some of your questions as you are unclear about
How about if he can be very concise? We've been doing this for
Sure.
2 hours now.
Okay, yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and members of the Carson City Planning Commission. My name is Jonathan Palm, P-A-L-M. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Nevada. And there were several things I jotted down here that I thought the commission had questions for. Right now, the property, the golf course is being irrigated with reclaimed wastewater, or as we used to call it, effluent, treated effluent, from the Carson City Wastewater Reclamation Facility. There is a permit from NDEP issued to Empire Ranch Golf Course that governs the use of the reclaimed wastewater. The permit allows the golf course to use the water in such a way that golfers or other people on the golf course will not be contacted with this reclaimed water. And I would submit, if you look at the epidemiological evidence over the many years that this has been in use, you'll find that nobody's ever gotten sick from playing golf on a golf course with reclaimed wastewater. And that is because the level of treatment is so great and the precautions are taken by the golf course. And so nobody has really gotten sick from playing on this golf course. And I'd also like to point out that in the many years that this permit has been in effect, there have been never have been a violation of this permit. The area that's we're talking about today, where the flat field are located, will be irrigated with reclaimed wastewater under the same conditions as before, when it was a fairway. And so the water will not contact the players on the field at any time, and we will operate the irrigation of the area in such a way that we provide a safe and healthy environment. Another issue was the mercury on site. We all know that this was a site of a mill where gold was milled from ore that was taken from Virginia City back in the 1800s. Mercury was used to extract the gold, and in those days, there was no concern about what they did with the mercury. So they just discharged it wherever they wanted to, including into the Carson River and into the property, into the land around the river. And so we got actually it was called a stormwater permit from NDEP. Whenever you disturb more than 2 acres of ground, you have to get a permit from NDEP. And so we did that, and one of the conditions of that permit was to contact the Superfund section of NDEP. And so I did that, met with the individual person who came out to the site. He took samples. We spent it was at least 2 days of taking samples of the area. And I said, will your report, or I asked him, will your report be available for the April 28th Carson City Planning Commission? And he said, no, he didn't think so. We last week is when we just finished taking the samples. So he's still working on that report. Now, we will get that report and we'll do whatever NDEP requires. I'm not sure what form that report will take. I know that mercury is present on the site in very low amounts, but it still is present. And NDEP will issue the report with any orders that they may want to issue to require the golf course to do something at this site. And we're waiting to find out what they will say. That certainly could be a condition to issuing the amendment to the special use permit if the commission feels that would be necessary. The third item is the parking lot and the runoff from that lot. Right now, it is not paved. I wouldn't exactly call it a gravel lot either, because it has been there for so long and it's been compacted pretty tight. And so when there is a storm, I anticipate that most of that water would run off. There would be some water that would permeate into the ground. I'll have to say I didn't do a study, I just did this observation. And if we were to continue the use of this golf course and not pave it, I would say that there's no change from before the project or after the project. Now, if the Carson City Planning Commission chooses to require that the area be paved, I'll submit that the runoff, the additional runoff from the area is very minimal. For one thing, the area of the parking lot is only 1/4 of an acre. And the storms we had in February of 2019, which totally flooded the golf course because the Carson River exceeded its banks and flooded. The maximum rain that fell in our area is 1.8 inches. It doesn't sound like very much, but one of the conditions of the permit was that no rainwater will run off and leave the golf course property. In other words, the wetlands, the constructed wetlands, the ponds that I'm referring to as stormwater management basins, but they're ponds, must have the sufficient capacity to retain all the rain that falls on the golf course. During these storms of 2019, the golf course stormwater management performed brilliantly. No water left the golf course that fell on the golf course. The problem was the Carson River exceeded its banks and flooded the golf course. That was really the issue. Anyway, I'm saying all this so that I can tell you with a great deal of confidence that the stormwater management system of the golf course performs. this area we're talking about where the flat fields are will be under storm conditions will behave exactly the same as it does now with the fairway, and we'll not see any storm water enter the Carson City stormwater system or any stormwater system because it's retained on the golf course. The area of the parking lot is not being irrigated with reclaimed water. It's not being irrigated at all. There's no need to. And what rain that falls on that area would run off into the Carson City stormwater system. It's separate from the golf course. So if we were to create a condition whereby additional water would run off into the Carson City stormwater system, then yes, that is an impact. But I'm saying that the present parking area is compacted to the point where it almost acts like it behaves like it's paved, because most of the water I would observe would run off into the Carson City's stormwater system. And so, paved or not, very minor impacts. Although if the commission felt that a study in greater detail is necessary, I could certainly perform that. I think it would be very straightforward, and there's really not much there to analyze because it's only 0.25 acres, and the quantity of runoff at this 1.8-inch storm that we had before was only 0.05 acre-feet of water total, which is about 6,000 gallons. And in talking about storm runoff, that's a very small quantity. Let's see, 1, 2, 3 parking lot. I think those are the 3 issues that I jotted down. I would certainly be happy to entertain any questions that the commissioners might have to help clarify this, if I may.
Okay. Thank you. It just, again, appears to me that we're talking about, well, if we feel strongly about this, we could add a condition. And I don't see it as our position here tonight to engineer the special use permit or the modification of a special use permit to allow for the soccer fields. I have to agree with the other commissioners. We understand the passion. But it just, if I had a list like this that says possible conditions of approval, this is what would be required by the city staff to make recommendations to us, and you had a copy of this that was similar, and you all agreed on it, then our job is simple. But it's not our job to sit here, I don't think, and engineer the requirements for the permit. And it's nothing, it's not against anybody in particular. I just don't think, I have to agree with Commissioner Preston, I don't think we're there yet. And
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to interrupt because I appreciate what you're saying. I'm speaking with Dwight, and his comment is, if you feel that a continuance is in order so that we can concisely come up with a presentation or a list of the subject contingencies or
more definitive plan.
For a more definitive plan so that it meets your comfort level, then certainly we have the energy and commitment to do that so that it is consistent with your vision for this project.
Well,
so if a continuous makes sense, then we'd happy to follow that path, if you will.
Well, I just don't want you to get in the position of where you're having to appeal a decision because we feel like as a group, and I'm not trying to speak for the whole commission right now, but for myself, if I feel like I don't have enough information and it's not arranged in an order that I'm comfortable in looking at, you know, you want to be successful. We want you to be successful. And I think just finding a way to say no is not always the best solution. And I would encourage, I know the staff has worked a lot with you and you all have worked on a lot of different things, but there's just a lot of big pieces that are not there yet, in my view, and I would like to see them there before you ask us to approve it or disapprove it. And, you know, I don't know that I don't want to speak out of turn for the rest of the commissioners, and they can certainly have their opportunity to say so. But you know, I would like to see something that we could handle a little bit easier than this and not take 2.5 hours to do it. So, are there any other comments from the commission? Mr. Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the discussion tonight. I think I'm convinced that your intents are true, and I was a soccer dad for many years. But I think Commissioner Preston hit it also, you know, and I'm just going to hold this up. This was a different agenda item tonight that we approved for a development in Carson City. And it's basically an engineering study, right? It has layouts, it has drainage, it has engineering wet stamps on it. It has things that, you know, that the city staff can look at and evaluate and know. And while, you know, you've got a layout here, there's no drainage study, there's no cross-section of what the field is constructed as. And I will tell you this, I've built soccer fields in Elko when I lived there, and there is a, you know, there's a design for those kinds of things. And I don't even see that here. Let me just finish. There's not an adequate traffic study involved in this. It's not a comprehensive package. The residents there in the neighborhood are concerned about ingress and egress. And I mean, I went out and looked at it over the weekend too, and I could see where that's an issue. You know, I drove into the neighborhood and drove out Deer Run Road and walked your fields and there. And I can't get there with what you're asking tonight because there's a lack of information and there's a lack of community acceptance of this because of concerns. And you know, when you say what is your vision? We're not here to have a vision. Okay, you are the applicant for this. This is your vision. We are as a body, you know, required or our job is to evaluate these and see if they're consistent with all of those things that are required to be accepted, and everything from, you know, consistency to the master plan to is it consistent with the neighborhood, and there's a number of those that I agree with city staff here that just are unanswered. And without those being there, you know, I think the best thing for us to do tonight is just take, you know, see where it's at and take a vote. I'm sure other commissioners have, you know, some other thoughts here, but until there's something like this that shows there's a plan, and I realize this is an expensive endeavor to do because you've got to hire people to do it, but this is a project that has a lot of a community concern about it, and I think it's necessary for it to be done, for anything to be moved forward. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wiggins?
Yeah, I think you actually covered most of what I was going to say. The significance and the change of use that is happening that's affecting all these residents who are now getting something different than they originally bought needs to be answered before we go forward. So I second what Borders and the other commissioner said down there.
Preston or Perry?
Perry. Perry. Some of Preston's, not all of it.
Well, it seems to be that a continuance would be the most productive at this point in time.
Well, is that your desire? I can't tell you.
Yes.
I can't tell you to continue it.
Yes, so that's what we're asking you to do.
Okay. All right.
If this is continued and the applicant is requesting a continuation, this means the staff and the applicant keep working together, and this will come back to you. Right now, you have not said a date certain, and I think that's appropriate not to identify a date certain because we don't know how long it will take to get this complete. If you were to deny this right now, he would not be able to reapply for the same project for a year. He'd have to wait a year. Also, if you were to deny it, he could appeal it to the board. So your choices are, he's volunteered a continuation. You can agree to that. You could deny it because you can't make the required findings, or you can approve it and articulate how you can make the findings.
Okay. Well, it appears to me that the MEDAC's approach would be to deny it, and I don't see that that's necessarily fair. Especially if it gets approved or it gets appealed, then it just causes all kinds of headache everywhere. I would be more in favor of accepting their request for continuation and just let us move on and continue working. And if that's, I don't know how we need to act on that. Hope.
Okay, I'm reading my code. The applicant may request a continuation of any application. Reading the wrong section. Hold on one sec. Page 20, special use. I just want to double check. The applicant may request a continuation of any application for a special use permit to a future meeting. A continuance suspends the timelines established in NRS in this code. So he's requested a continuation. It sounds like a majority of the commission is okay with the concept of a continuation and seeing this when there's a little more data to look at. And it probably, just for the clarity of the record, if there could be a motion that based on the request of the applicant, there's a motion to continue to date uncertain, second, and then we actually have an action. But I'd like it to say based on the request of the applicant.
Okay. So the motion would be at the request of the applicant, we'll continue this item to a date uncertain. I can make that motion. Is there a second?
Can I just ask a question there before we finish that? So can there be other requirements in that continuation that the applicant will return with a engineering plan, a cumulative traffic study, in anything else like that before we evaluate this? Because I don't want to end up in the same spot here 2 months from now, because we'll just burn time, unless there's something more to this.
No, I think that actually would be helpful. So I think if we do have the motion in a second and the majority votes to continue, it would be helpful to both the staff and the applicant if the commissioners would articulate their expectations so that when staff sits with the applicant, it's not just staff saying, we need this information. It's very clear that the commission's looking for this information as well.
Okay.
Are you proposing an amendment then?
I'm proposing amending
All right.
the motion.
Commissioners, if I may, this is Todd Reese, Deputy District Attorney.
Oh,
I would, I appreciate Hope's recommendation and the commissioner's desires. It would probably provide more flexibility to the applicant and to staff to simply make the motion to continue to a date uncertain at the applicant's request. But you can also, during your discussion of the item after the motion has been seconded, you can certainly place on the record your thoughts, or each commissioner's thoughts on what should be brought back to the board to have it be a complete packet and provide guidance to the applicant and to staff.
Okay, so I retract my amendment, but now we can go through the commission.
Commissioner Kilgore has to second it first.
Okay.
Second. All right. Now, is there any further discussion? Commissioner Perry.
Oh, to add now?
Yeah.
Okay, so upon further discussion, I believe that there needs to be, before it is, I was going to say before, that the evaluation during this time when this is being looked at again is to require an engineering study and a drainage plan and a cumulative traffic study as part of the submittal before the commission looks at this again. Is that fair?
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. I would like to suggest that as a guide, the late material submitted by the planning department of the possible conditions of approval be the guide to the items needed to be submitted.
Okay. That's a good recommendation. I would also like to see somewhere, and I know that they talked about using the effluent to water the fields, but Commissioner Preston's comment about contact sport and effluent water, I think is a question that I think we would like to have an answer to also. I agree with what they told us, but I think this is a different condition, and I just like to feel comfortable about that. Commissioner Estwine, you look like you're...
Yeah, I keep bringing up the wetlands, and I'd like to see them do a delineation of all the wetlands that are involved in this.
Yeah.
And then evidence that they are not having any impact on those wetlands.
Okay. Mr. Wiggins?
Yeah, I would also suggest to the applicant they work with the neighborhood and address their concerns, whether it be through hours of operation, no games, no bleachers. It's a practice field that we're going to use 20 hours a week, whatever it might be, would alleviate probably a lot of their concerns, because even if we approve it, they're going to go to the board. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Whew. Long fight with a short stick. Staff report.
I I don't remember what's gone to the board, so I'm not prepared to speak to that. Future agenda items, do you remember? Growth management's coming next month. Let's see. A growth management application, the annual growth management report. What else do we have?
As part of that, we also wanted a different delineation of the water supply.
Okay,
We talked about that.
tell me.
Commissioner Tingle talked about it. We all talked about it.
Okay,
Lee
I'll talk
proposed
to
it.
Lee
It was
tomorrow.
it was another part of that whole thing that should come with it. And we all, at the time, we all thought it would be useful.
Okay, Lee will probably know about that. I'll talk to him in the office about that tomorrow. Yes. For growth management? Oh, okay. Oh, is it complete? Okay, the Longview PUD, which I think some of you have heard about, is in for a PUD. So that will be a big one next month.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that all we have next month, or?
I think the others are easier. That's the biggie for
Okay.
next month. Okay.
Commissioners,
Thanks.
any other commissioners' comments or reports? The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Is there anybody
We
out
have
there?
3 callers on the line. Caller, please state your name after the tones.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Jackie Ames. I didn't realize I was going to get to say anything afterwards. I am going to say I'm very disappointed that they're going to continue and we're not looking to actually, dismiss the project. I know you're asking for this individual to work with the neighborhood. It does not matter how many tests he provides or and I'm not prepared for this. I'm trying to maintain my composure, but I am still the one that lives across the street, directly across the street from this individual. And then all of the Empire Ranch neighbors are downwind from this individual. Everybody's talked about traffic and all the other, pertinent things about land, but has anybody talked about noise? I have listened for months. This guy grading, doing whatever he's been doing out there, he's been told multiple times. He moved his grader yesterday. Last night, my husband and I watched him move it after we saw him still grading after he was told not to. Now, if we can hear that type of noise, I'm telling you now, I'm a 10-year soccer mom, and I am a sports fanatic my entire life. This is not the neighborhood or the venue to place his soccer field. I understand he keeps jumping around. It was 2 fields. It's supposed to be more. He says it's only going to be the one. He wants people, semi-pros, to come in, use this as a higher level training ground, and then send them off. And on top of that, do exhibitions. I'm going to have full view of all their bleachers, of all their individuals. Now, you know what? I could sit out and I could watch it from my window, love soccer, but I can't listen to it 24/7. And it's the same with my entire neighbors. You just heard us all put together a very intelligent, educated documentation of all the reasons why we think this should be denied. And Mark Riddell did not come to the table with anything prepared, including his application. So, I'm extremely disappointed that it will be continued because I haven't slept a night since I found out about this the end of March. And now how long more do we have to go? Or do I now just sell my house? So I actually lost connection on one phone. I'm on my cell phone. I had no idea I was going to get to speak, but there's just probably so many things I could say, and not one thing Mark put together that was intelligent in any kind of format. The article, I hope you all read his article, because his article said exactly what he's not saying now. He came to visit me personally. My husband, he asked for our support. My husband and I said, please answer 3 questions, and we may possibly look at supporting you. He wouldn't answer one, and exactly what he did tonight, got angry and loud, is what he did with my husband and I. This is not an individual that I think, he says he's love for the kids, the love for the game. You've heard all his people who are for him, but I'm sorry, everything I've seen about him, everything I know about this man, I don't think it's for the love of the game. I think it's for literally the pocketbook. I apologize, but I'm going to be candid. This is probably my last shot to do this, and I'm really shocked that it is being continued. Because now, what are we supposed to do as a community? I mean, honestly, get a lawyer? I don't know. I honestly don't know what to do as a community.
Thank you.
Caller, please state your name after the tones.
That was my phone.
Go ahead.
That's you, Giant.
Sorry, I have no comments.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Caller, please state your name after the tone.
Yes, I have a comment. This is Anna Winston. If Mr. Ratto is just now proposing one field, first it was 2, then it was 1, I would like to know, why is he advertising sportlogicinc.com videos when he says he has no intention in doing that? And the map shows Empire Ranch, and it shows I can't think of the name of the other street right now. Empire Ranch, and tell me the name of the street that they're putting it on. I can't think of it. Morgan Mill in the map, and it shows the river, and it shows all the things that he's going to do. And he said earlier, under no circumstances was I presenting this to the Sports Logic Inc. video on your area, and it shows the street and the river and access to it and Empire Ranch. And now he's denying it, that it's just going to be one field. So I am so upset, as others are, I'm sure, that he just changes his opinions and had nothing to show for it. And we're going to continue this. And the other thing I want to ask, that if this continues for another month or 2, that he cannot work in the field at all, period. That has to be one of the contingencies and one of the things to put in that piece of paper until we meet again, or until you meet again.
We'll all meet together.
That's all. Thank you. Okay, that's great. But I think that he has all these chances to do this, that, and modify this, and we are left with the mess and as the people that live here, we have to deal with it. But he cannot work in the field while we're waiting for all this to happen. That should be a requirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all?
It looks like we have one more caller. Caller, please state your name at the beeps.
Glenn Conant. My comment would be simply this. I guess, I'm not in your position to make a determination, but I can read the master plan, and it seems to me like the master plan is clear on protecting established neighborhoods. We are established. We were here first before these soccer fields. And the other part of this is we all live here. We know what's up at Livermore Complex. Most of the time you park outside and hike in. And there's no restrictions in this. He can say, well, I'm not going to put in bleachers, or we're not going to have more than 20 people, but the math doesn't add up. I agree with some of the comments. We estimated about 50 people for one field and no spectators. And that's 2 teams, substitutes, and if it's a training facility, there'll probably be more than that. So none of this makes sense. And I'm still saying it's just not a fit for this neighborhood. And I really hope, and Morgan Mill is disgusting. That's one of the worst roads in the city. Come on, that has to be fixed. And even that's being let go. So all I'm saying is understand our concerns are not against soccer. It's just not a good fit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize. It looks like there is another caller. Caller, please state your name at the tones.
Hi, this is Kara O'Keefe. We just bought a house over on Dogleg Road. I just wanted to address the point of sports. I have 3 children. I now have 7 grandchildren. They've all played soccer, including a number of other sports. We have a son that was on the fast track to possibly wrestling on an Olympic wrestling team. So we have been involved in sports. We have absolutely nothing against sports. The fact that he's saying that there's not going to be any people there, that's obviously, we went to events, and this is a one-on-one person event. It doesn't even involve an entire team. And we've seen events grow from 1,000 people to the next year to a 7,000 person non-tournament event that we've had to deal with. So the fact that he's saying nobody's going to go see this except the players and maybe one person to watch is a bunch of malarkey. So I know what it's like. Go out to in April. Of course, it's done because of COVID now. Next year, in April, you go out to Reno, the event center. The houses have had to hire extra security. The houses up and down the street. I apologize, I don't know the name, because an event that's able to hold 7,600 people can't hold that many. People are parking up and down the streets. They're parking in people's houses and driveways. Cars are towed all the time. People are putting signs up that they better not park in their private parking areas, and they do anyway. So I know exactly the kind of spectator group that's going to be coming with a sport. It doesn't matter if it's 1 field or 15 fields. It's going to still be too many people for a small residential neighborhood to hold. And that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you.
We have no more oh, we do have another caller. Hold on one moment. Caller, after the tones, please state your name.
Oh, hello. Okay, this is Aileen Conan again. And I just have to comment. I have a lot of concerns about a continuance. First of all, he is going to go back and he's going to work on those fields without doing all your recommended studies. Second of all, so we will have to be calling you every day. Then also, what about the neighborhood? Soccer is just not a fit. Even if he gets approval that the mercury is not there anymore and the storm drains are fine and the everything is all great and dandy, soccer still doesn't belong in this neighborhood. And we're not all old fogies here. We have families with kids that do play soccer, but they said themselves they don't want stadium here in our backyard. This is so frustrating. So by doing the continuance, I am very disappointed. This should have been denied, and until such time where he has completed all of the studies, all of that, and then reapply. I know it cannot, it may not be able to be a golf course forever, but my goodness, so we're going to continue our stress for the next however long you let this go on and on and on. And we have been, so stressed out for the last 2 months. And now we have to continue being stressed out, and because we know what's coming. You should have been able to pick out all his double speak, all his lies, and, what can I say? We presented you with a whole folder of everything with proof of what he's saying out of one side of his mouth and planning to do on the other side of his mouth. In the same sentence, he double speaks. So anyway, I think you can tell that I am very, very, very frustrated, and I just can't deal with the stress. He is the one, the applicant, and he is not working to do it the right way. He should be made to suffer and be denied for now, so we can have a little peace of mind until such time where he completes all his studies and all his required stuff, and then we can go at it again. I mean, we've been doing this. The only reason we didn't do it last year is because of COVID. But we did it in 2018, 2019, 21. How long? I mean, when is this going to end? So anyway, I'm sorry, but I just so frustrated. And we have proof he was involved in 2018. It's in that folder that my husband prepared for you guys. He has the plan for the field, the soccer field. His name is on it. So, we're not just making this up. So, anyway, I'm sorry, but I just can't believe this. I feel like, oh boy, I come from Southern California, and one reason we left California is because the state began to coddle the criminals, and find the people who were graffitied upon or whatever for having graffiti, but we couldn't get a kid arrested for doing graffiti.
Thank you.
Anyway, all right. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Just so everyone knows, the fact that we just continued this doesn't mean that we approve. What we're asking for is the documents that we should have normally gotten so that we could make a finding, in fact. It's not that the finding is already decided. It's that we're not even in a position to where we can make those findings because he neglected to provide the data. And I think once we have the data, then we will be able to listen to the people in the area and listen to the proponents of soccer and come up with a decision that makes sense to everybody. So I would hope that the people that were listening don't see this as necessarily a defeat. This is just an attempt by us to get all the information available so we can make a rational decision and not an emotional one. Sorry, I'm editorializing. Are there any more calls?
There's no further comment.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second?